Young Miss Lu, what are you doing? Young Miss Lu, what are you doing? A eunuch stationed in the middle of the hall frantically shouted. His voice was shrill and instantly the attention of everyone inside the hall. Lu Rui looked all around. The girls who had been chatting happily with her were now distancing themselves from her. They were afraid of being implicated in her destruction of the green chrysanthemums. Young Miss Lu, you've destroyed His Majesty's treasured green chrysanthemums. I saw it with my own eyes. She suddenly panicked. How could that be possible? I only bumped into them a little. How could I have knocked off all of the petals? Lu Rui knew how much force she fell with, and it was not even remotely enough for such an outcome. Something had definitely happened. At that time, Yu Fu was the only one in front of her. She had definitely done something. Lu Rui reached out to grab her. Her hands were dyed green and resembled a forest monster from a picture book. She was truly horrifying. Just as her hand was about to dye Yu Fu's white jacket, a pair of hands reached out from the side and stopped her in midair. If you lay a single finger on Yu Fu, I will have you regret it for the rest of your life. Gu Shubai looked at her coldly. His eyes, which were usually full of kindness, were now exuding a coldness. He had been standing off to the side and had heard every word of what Lu Rui had said. He just found the setting to be ill-suited for an argument with a girl. He also wished to see how Yu Fu would deal with this sort of a provocative girl. Now that he saw her reach out with her dirty hands to grab Yu Fu, he could no longer hold back and move to stop her. Earlier, it was because she avoided me that I fell into the flowers. She definitely saw that I wasn't moving very fast and could not possibly have made such a big mess. Yu Fu, don't you think so? She had just been mocking her earlier, but she was now hoping for her support. Lu Rui's shamelessness was really far above the average. Everyone looked at Yu Fu and saw her earnestly say, I only saw young Miss Lu run into the flowers, then the flowers ended up like this. Such pretty green chrysanthemums, it's such a pity. What do the other young misses think? The young misses who were accompanying Lu Rui froze, then looked at Gu Shubai's group behind Yu Fu, and they were all looking back at them with stern looks. The great efforts that they had put into their clothes today, what other reason could there be than to attract the attention of the young sirs of the Gu family? Now that they were being looked at, it was natural that they would do their best to leave a good impression on them. That's right. Young Miss Yu Fu is right. Lu Rui's face turned as white as a sheet. She did not think that they would not help her. His Majesty has arrived. Emperor Ning walked in from outside the hall with a long procession of people following him. Among them were the eldest prince, the second prince, and Princess Danyang. We greet your Majesty. Everyone stood up to perform their salute. Emperor Ning noticed that there was a bit of a commotion in the hall and carefully looked over at the fallen petals of his treasured green chrysanthemums, and his eyebrow began to twitch uncontrollably. Which suicidal lunatic had reduced his beloved green chrysanthemums to such a state? He looked over at the people near the green chrysanthemum and quickly noticed a girl with dirt and green chrysanthemum petals in her hair. Both of her hands had also been dyed green. He immediately let out an angry snort and walked over. What happened here? How did our green chrysanthemums end up like this? The green chrysanthemums were without petals. All that remained was the center of the flower, and it looked quite comical. Yu Fu could not hold back and secretly began to laugh. Her sweet smile was noticed by Emperor Ning, and it significantly reduced his anger. Replying to your Majesty, it was young Miss Lu of Minister Lu's family who accidentally bumped into the green chrysanthemum while looking at them. She knocked off all of the petals. Lu Rui began to tremble. Emperor Ning noticed that it was the girl with mud in her hair, and he could no longer be bothered with looking at her any further. Instead, he was very interested in the girl who was secretly laughing. You, raise your head and let us take a look. Emperor Ning pointed toward the center of the hall, and everyone looked in that direction. There, they saw a little girl who had not finished growing, and she was standing next to Marquis Gu's heir. Gu Shubai reached out a hand and gently pushed her behind his back. It was only now that Yu Fu realized that Emperor Ning was pointing at her. Before she could hide her smile, she looked up. Her graceful face with the touch of red on her forehead perfectly resembled Chang'e floating loftily. To look like this at such an age combined with such a valuable necklace, Emperor Ning's eyes squinted slightly and pretended to not know who she was. With a slightly heavy voice, he said, "When we were speaking, you were secretly laughing. What were you laughing at?" Everyone began to whisper amongst themselves. His Majesty was truly angry today. He was even going to argue with a little girl who was laughing. Was it not clear that he was exceedingly angry? Gu Shubai was hesitant about whether or not he should help her out, but Yu Fu spoke up in her clear voice that rang out beautifully like a silver bell. Replying to Your Majesty said that the green chrysanthemums had ended up like this. This humble girl was standing next to the green chrysanthemums and unconsciously snuck a look. I saw that it looked like a feather duster that had lost all of its feathers, and I could no longer hold back my laughter. PFT. The description of feather duster caused everyone present to burst out laughing. Looking again at the bare green chrysanthemums, did it not perfectly resemble a featherless duster? A child's words carried no harm. Emperor Ning's foul mood had also been dispelled by her words quite a bit. Little girl, your words really are quite entertaining. Which family are you from? Why have we never seen you before? Gu Huaijiang stood up at an opportune moment. Your Majesty, this is this subject's adopted daughter, Yu Fu. Under Your Majesty's instructions, I brought her into the palace. Sure enough, she was Yu Fu. Emperor Ning rejoiced. So it was you. Yi Zhao said that you know how to predict rainfall. Sure enough, you are a smart and interesting girl. A middle-aged beautiful woman seated to his side saw this and smiled, warmly waving to Yu Fu. Good girl, you are really beautiful. Quickly come and let this one take a look. Emperor Ning looked at her and ran his fingers through his beard. Make sure to destroy the evidence. Imperial Consort Xian had always been good at picking up on Emperor Ning's feelings and knew that he had taken an interest in Yu Fu. Thus she took the initiative to call her over. She truly had not spent over 2 decades at his side for nothing. She had also given birth to the eldest prince. She was even better at understanding him than Emperor Ning's most trusted aide. Yu Fu stepped forward on the red carpet of soft velvet. In front of the members of the imperial family, she was very steady. Even with her young age, she maintained a poised and dignified pace, but also was not lacking in the gentleness of a young girl. Imperial Consort Xian could not stop herself from nodding with a smile. This was a young girl who could withstand the pressure of large scenes. She ought to be born from some noble family and was definitely not just some girl from the wilderness. Good girl, look at your cheeks. They're so pretty. Your Majesty, look, doesn't she look a little like Princess Danyang from when she was little? Her hand passed by the necklace on Yu Fu's neck and paused for a moment, then brushed past it without leaving a trace. Yu Fu stood next to her very naturally, allowing her to continue with her praise. Imperial Consort Xian had brought up Princess Danyang with good intentions. In her eyes, this both praised Yu Fu and praised Princess Danyang. One was Lord Marquis Gu's beloved adopted daughter, and the other was Emperor Ning's most beloved daughter. It was more than suitable to bring them up in the same breath. Emperor Ning, however, shook his head with a smile. Danyang was not as pretty as Yu Fu when she was little, nor was she as eloquent. In the end, Marquis Gu has good fortune. Such a beautiful daughter fell from the heavens, and it would be great if one fell next to us. These words were partially goodwill towards Gu Huaijiang, and one partially his true feelings. He did indeed have a pretty good impression of Yu Fu. Good impressions are often made during the first meeting. This often hinged on a strange type of affinity. As for Yu Fu, she had this sort of ability that could have anyone who saw her feel a type of connection. They could not stop themselves from liking her. This was likely because she was born exceptionally beautiful. Princess Danyang was seated further down, and her heart was filled with displeasure. She was the princess. Among all of the girls in Eastern Ling, she was the noblest, yet Emperor Ning actually compared her to a girl of unclear origins, and he even said that she was not as beautiful as Yu Fu. It was all that old hag, Imperial Consort Xian, who led her father emperor to say those things. Something small and white flashed past her eyes and gave Princess Danyang a fright. Only then did she realize that the second prince was eating some seeds and had tossed one past her field of view to remind her to smile. He was relatively clear-minded. If Princess Danyang still wished to marry Gu Shubai, she could not afford to reveal the slightest bit of discontent towards Yu Fu. She hastily hid her unhappy expression and looked up with a smile and threw a playful tantrum at Emperor Ning. Father Emperor likes you, Fu. Could it be that you no longer like this daughter? Daughter doesn't accept. Emperor Ning had a pampered daughter, and he would often chat and laugh with her to alleviate his stress. It would also allow him to spend his later years in comfort. He burst out laughing and allowed Yu Fu to return to her seat. He then turned to Gu Shubai's group and said, "You should also return to your seats. As for young Miss Liu, forget it. We are in a good mood today and will not blame you. But as a girl, you should be discreet in word and action. In the future, we hope to never see another person misbehave so badly." Lu Rui heard that he was in a good mood and thought that she had escaped this trial, but who knew that the latter half of Emperor Ning's message would nearly drop her to her knees. The meaning behind those words was that he no longer wished to see her. She could no longer enter the palace. Minister of the Ministry of Appointments, Lu Zhan, hastily stood up and expressed his thanks to Emperor Ning, then had people take Lu Rui out of the hall. He knew that this daughter of his had been ruined. Of the families in the capital with influence, none would want to take in a girl who could not enter the palace, much less a family like Marquis Gu's manor. Eldest brother, will young Miss Liu no longer be allowed into the palace? Yu Fu sat next to Gu Shubai and quietly asked him. It seemed that she had not considered things on a deeper level. Gu Shubai faintly agreed, regardless of the setting. She spoke disrespectfully towards you. This is the outcome that she deserves. Even if His Majesty did not punish her today, I would not allow her to live happily. Yu Fu said, but that vase of green chrysanthemums, Gu Shubai gave her a look to cut her off, no longer allowing her to continue. He then pulled out something that reflected a silver light and secretly handed it to her. I know that you did it. You did very well, but you need to pay attention next time to destroy the evidence. The thing with the silver reflection was one of Yu Fu's silver needles. Lu Rui had indeed not fallen with enough force to knock off all of the petals. It only happened because Yu Fu threw out a needle. At that time, he had been standing at a distance of 10 paces and noticed Yu Fu's actions. That was why he did not step forward to help. Since she herself could act, there was no need for him to do anything unnecessary. Yu Fu thought for a bit but did not reach out to accept the silver needle. Eldest brother, you don't blame me for being vicious and no longer giving her a chance to enter the palace? Her no longer being able to enter the palace is a good thing. Think about the things that she said to you today. Such a frivolous and unreasonable person. If she ended up offending another noble person in the palace, it's possible that she would die without leaving a corpse behind. You not letting her enter the palace actually saved her life. Yu Fu smiled widely. It really was great that he was her eldest brother. Initially, she had been a little conflicted, wondering whether or not she had acted too severely and ruining Lu Rui's life. Having been comforted by Gu Shubai like this, she felt much better. I knew that you guys were standing nearby. Based on your martial abilities, you would definitely notice. If I didn't fight back, you would need to act for my sake. I did not want to implicate you guys. She had a resolute expression, her eyes glimmering while looking at Gu Shubai. Unswerving, every little thing blossomed in her eyes. Gu Shubai responded with a smile and reached out to pat her head. However, while Emperor Ning had been chatting about something, his name had suddenly been brought up. Marquis Gu, we recall that your Shubai has already become of age this year. Xiugu is also 19, right? The children have grown up and should get married. Gu Shubai's hands froze, and he quickly looked toward Gu Huaijiang. Had he not said that he had already refused the matter of marriage? For His Majesty to bring up the matter of marriage in front of the members of the court and members of the imperial family, what were his intentions? Wait until Yu Fu is a little older. Gu Huaijiang's expression changed briefly before quickly returning to normal. Could it be that he had not been sufficiently clear with Emperor Ning the previous time? Or could it be that Emperor Ning was deeply envious of him and would insist on marrying Gu Shubai to Princess Danyang to feel at ease? Many thanks to your Majesty for the concern. My wife has been deceased for many years, and this subject has been busy fighting campaigns all across the country. Now that I have more spare time, I will definitely listen closely to my children and help them find wives that they like. Wives that they like? These words meant that Marquis Gu's manor did not care about the family circumstances of the daughters-in-law. All that mattered was whether or not the son liked her. This caused many of the people present to collapse. However, there were some girls with great beauty or remarkable abilities who rejoiced. If marriages were arranged by His Majesty based on family influence, they likely would not be considered by His Majesty. The one chosen for Gu Shubai would most likely have been Princess Danyang. Aside from the imperial family, who else would be worthy of Marquis Gu's manor? With Lord Marquis Gu having said this, they were the ones to have hope. When Princess Danyang heard this, her heart chilled, and she subconsciously looked in Gu Shubai's direction. However, she found that he was carefully peeling grapes for Yu Fu. Not only did he cleanly remove all of the skin from the grapes, but he also used a small silver chopstick to remove the seeds. Only then did he place it in Yu Fu's bowl. Was such meticulous work in serving someone something that the heir of the dignified Marquis Gu's manor should be doing? Her hands slightly clenched under the table, and her thin silk handkerchief was nearly torn in half. Emperor Ning lifted his eyelids and gave Gu Huaijiang a profound look. With a smile, he pointed at him. You, those words are telling us that we are not allowed to haphazardly name a wife. Isn't that right? These words were said with a great deal of ambiguity and made it impossible for others to tell whether he was happy or furious. Those present fell silent for a moment. By the time that Gu Huaijiang was about to stand up to apologize, Emperor Ning had begun laughing and winked at him. Don't worry. You already told us before. We remember. We can be considered Shubai's uncle. Can we not show some concern about his marriage? Shubai, if you have a girl that you are interested in, you must tell us. We will definitely sanction your marriage. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. They had thought that Emperor Ning intended to meddle with Marquis Gu's manor's marriages. It turned out that he merely wanted to celebrate the marriage. Lord Marquis Gu did not want him to meddle in the marriage, yet he just wanted to handle the matter of sanctioning a marriage. He was eagerly kissing up to the cold Lord Marquis Gu. This scene was quite enviable to everyone else. To the other officials, who would not want the honor of having a marriage sanctioned by His Majesty. It was only him, Marquis Gu, yet His Majesty insisted on chasing after him and begging to sanction one of his child's marriages. Yes, if this subject has a girl of interest, I will definitely ask your Majesty to sanction the marriage. Since he did not ask for a marriage to be sanctioned, that meant that he did not have a girl that he was interested in, right? Princess Danyang felt extremely embarrassed. Looking at the girls from noble families and their faces filled with joy, she felt even more displeased. Could it be that her feelings for Gu Shubai over the many years were so unworthy of being mentioned, and he was completely unwilling to even consider her? Could it be that he did not know just how much doing this would hurt her feelings? Your Majesty has been completely focused on the young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor, but this wife remembers that Prime Minister Yin's eldest young sir is the same age as the heir of Marquis Gu, right? Imperial Consort Xian had carefully noted Princess Danyang's expression and faintly smiled, guiding the conversation in Yin Shua's direction. Yu Fu was eating grapes but raised her head when she heard the familiar name. Yin Shua was currently sitting next to a middle-aged man with a sharp gaze. That person had bony features, and his face was without any extra flesh and looked very mean. Thinking about it, that must be Prime Minister Yin, the one that other officials in court nicknamed Hawk's Eyes. Sure enough, his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. Behind them was a young and beautiful girl. It was probable that she was Yin Shua's younger sister. She looked to be about the same age as Princess Danyang, but she was thin like a willow that would bend in the wind. She was not as round as Princess Danyang. Suddenly hearing Imperial Consort Xian's words, Yin Shua froze as Emperor Ning picked up on this topic. Right? If you did not bring it up, we would have forgotten. Prime Minister Yin, has your family's eldest son gotten engaged? Emperor Ning was quite entertained with his act as a matchmaker on this night. Thinking about it, it must be because all of the sons and daughters of the court's officials were present. He wanted to use this opportunity to produce a loving couple. This was also an age-old routine of these imperial banquets. Yin Yen remained silent for a moment, then said with some difficulty, replying to your Majesty, one has not yet been decided. This child has been fully focused on studying. and he is determined to serve the court and the country. He is unwilling to find a wife and divide his focus, and this subject is helpless to do anything about it. These words conveyed the meaning that he also did not need Emperor Ning to prescribe a marriage. Inshua looked at Yin, his eyes showing that he did not understand the tone. Though he had never said such a thing, Yin refusing a marriage on his behalf was a good thing. He casually picked up a wine cup to cover his expression, then looked across the hall. In the middle of Marquis Gu's Manor's table, Yu Fu and Gu Shubai were intimately seated together. Who knew what they were saying, as they were laughing quite boisterously. His pupils slightly constricted. These siblings were not related by blood. To be so intimate, was it proper? Then looking over at Princess Danyang's expression, she was fiercely gritting her teeth to restrain herself. It was clear that she was thinking the same as herself. Emperor Ning ran his fingers through his beard, but did not appear to be angry over Yin Yan's roundabout refusal. In truth, he had great hopes for Yin Shua. He hoped that he would be able to take over Yin Yan's position and naturally did not want to casually choose a marriage for him. Easternling's prime minister and generals did not get along. This was something that everyone in court knew. If the two families were connected, would they not be able to completely mend this divide? His eyes slowly drifted over towards Yu Fu, who was currently eating grapes. The charming little girl smiled so sweetly. But this matter would need to wait until Yu Fu grew up a little more to be brought up. Imperial Consort Xian's prize, look at how eager His Majesty is. The children should be given a chance to get acquainted to facilitate the discussion of marriage. Tonight is the celebration of the Mid-Autumn Festival. How about this? Wife, has my niece come and perform a dance for your Majesty? Imperial Consort Xian spoke slowly, then personally received a swan-necked wine kettle made of gold inlaid with precious gems and filled Emperor Ning's cup to around 70%. Allowing the girls of noble families who had not yet gotten married to perform was also a tradition of imperial banquets. Normally, after the performances came to an end, Emperor Ning might personally decide on a few marriages. This would both express his concern for his subjects and help stabilize the situation in court. Easternling's empress died at a young age, and the members of the imperial harem viewed the eldest prince's birth mother, Imperial Consort Xian, as the highest rank. The important opening performance at this time would naturally end up falling to someone from Imperial Consort Xian's family. Emperor Ning nodded his head in satisfaction. Good. Young Miss Wang is generous and dignified. Having her go first could not be more fitting. After saying this, a young girl dressed beautifully slowly stood up. She could not hide her joy and nervousness and bowed to Emperor Ning. This girl will go and get changed. Would your Majesty please wait a moment? Emperor Ning raised his cup and gestured to the officials present. Come, would all my beloved officials enjoy a cup to celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival? A short while later, the sound of instruments began to fill the hall, and 2 rows of dancers came into the hall. They wore light yellow dresses that were tidy. Taking small steps, they came together as quickly as the tide moves. For a while, they could not tell where that young Miss Wang was. It was inevitable that everyone would feel curious. Following this, the dancers separated like a flower blossoming, revealing a bit of white at the center of the flower. It was young Miss Wang. Good. Emperor Ning applauded. If the group had not separated, we really would not have been able to see where young Miss Wang was. This dance was fresh and was far more interesting than the solo dances of the past. As long as your Majesty liked it, Imperial Consort Xian attentively poured more wine from the side. Young Miss Wang, who had been praised, revealed a smile and waved her flowing sleeves. To be able to receive His Majesty's praise, it was possible that young Miss Wang would be the only one to receive such a prize tonight. But one thing still remained uncertain. Would His Majesty decide to marry her to anyone? Imperial Consort Xian had already brought up the matter of Inshua not having a wife. She also had young Miss Wang be the first to perform. Could it be? The second prince's gaze drifted in Inshua's direction. Aside from the young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor, the eldest son of Prime Minister Yin was also a person in high demand. Emperor Ning wanted to cultivate him into someone who could replace Yin Yan. This was something that even a fool could recognize. Inshua also lived up to his expectations. The way he dealt with people and handled matters was smoother and more likable than his father. There were some officials in court who disliked Yin Yin, but they would still like Yin Shua. Earlier, Yin Yin had respectfully declined Emperor Ning, but what if Yin Shua himself took an interest in young Miss Wang? Then things would not be great. Whoever married Imperial Consort Xian's niece would be in the same camp as the eldest prince. Fortunately, Yin Shua was only watching the dance out of courtesy, and his gaze did not focus on young Miss Wang. Rather, he was not focused on anything. The second prince relaxed just a little, then turned his attention back to the family from Marquis Gu's manor. The dance that had been praised by Emperor Ning did not seem to be able to attract any of their attention. Instead, they were more focused on observing Yu Fu's first time into the palace and whether or not she could get accustomed to the atmosphere in the palace. He relaxed completely. Suddenly feeling someone tug at his sleeve, he tilted his head. Sure enough, he saw Princess Danyang giving him some looks. Second brother, you go and suggest to Father Emperor to let me perform too. I want to be the last to perform. Nonsense, you are a dignified princess. How can you perform along with these young misses? The second prince refused her. Every time there is an imperial banquet, these performances are shown. The young misses that have not gotten married are displaying their abilities to marry up. You are a princess. You should already be marrying the best. There's no need for such performances. Second brother, Princess Danyang anxiously said, what nonsense about the best? The one that is the best does not want me. Have you not noticed? I want to perform. I want him to know how beautiful I am. I want him to grovel beneath me. Second brother, this also stands to benefit you. You must help me. The second prince naturally knew who she was speaking of when she mentioned the best. He hesitated for a while before finally nodding. Fine, I will let you perform in the finale. You need to put on a good performance. Don't let me lose face. Don't worry, second brother. I have prepared this long in advance. You just need to suggest it. She already knew that Emperor Ning would reminisce about the past and bring up the matter of Gu Shubai's marriage. She had already prepared herself for this. If he wanted, it would naturally be fine. If he did not want to, she would need to bring out the performance that she had carefully prepared to reclaim his gaze. With the conclusion of young Miss Wang's performance, the sound of applause filled the hall. Gu Huaijiang smiled and looked at Yu Fu, fearing that she would be bored. Yu Fu, did you like young Miss Wang's dance? I liked it. A group of people dancing is far livelier than one person dancing. Everyone likes liveliness, and His Majesty also likes it. The normal dancers helped make young Miss Wang look like a goddess. Hearing Yu Fu's words, Gu Huaijiang nodded with a smile and did not say anything else. She was right. For young Miss Wang's dance to have received so much praise was not just a result of her own hard work. Rather, it was the hard work of all in the group. It was different from the dance performances from other young misses in past imperial banquets. Her act was both novel and lively, and it could have the normal dancers help elevate her own beauty. This sort of plan. Gu Huaijiang looked up and saw Imperial Consort Xian looking at young Miss Wang in satisfaction. He quickly retracted his gaze. He did not want to know about the secret plots and fights occurring in court, nor did he want to participate. He was even less interested in siding with any prince. The cup of grape wine from the western regions had a mellow and fragrant smell. In the candlelight of the imperial palace, it shone beautifully. Gu Huaijiang held the golden cup and looked at it a few times in the candlelight before downing half. After young Miss Wang, there were 7 other people who performed. Whether it be song or dance, calligraphy or painting, all of the performances were exceptional. It was immediately evident that they had practiced a great many times. These girls were all youthful and possessed great beauty. Most importantly, they had extraordinary backgrounds. It was only thanks to this that they would have this opportunity to perform in the imperial palace. Among them was Yin Shua's younger sister, Yin Jiyao. She wore a green and white dress with wide sleeves, and paired with her slender waist, she resembled a soft-stem bulrush or a willow by the water. While she stood there and performed her song, she was beautiful beyond words. When the 7th person finished performing, the second prince suddenly stood up from his seat and bowed toward Emperor Ning. Though daughter may be clumsy, I to perform to pray for a good autumn on Father Emperor's behalf and for our Eastern Ling to have bountiful harvests. In the past, A princess had never performed at an imperial banquet, and Emperor Ning hesitated for a moment. Princess Danyang also gave him a look. That look faintly seemed to drift in Gu Shubai's direction. Emperor Ning understood. Covering his mouth, he let out a faint sigh. My Danyang has grown up and knows to show understanding for her father emperor. Since you have such intentions, you may begin. Princess Danyang's excuse was high-sounding, and there were no flaws to pick at. But there were some who were familiar with things and could guess the reason. Quietly whispering amongst themselves and reading their lips, the name of Marquis Gu's heir appeared. Gu Shubai held his golden goblet and swept his gaze across the room, taking note of what the people present were discussing. Many thanks, Father Emperor. Her performance was the zither song, Feng Qiu Huang. Legends said that Sima Xiangru used this to sway Zhuo Wenjun. It was thanks to this that the story of Wenjun's elopement exists. Eastern Ling favored Confucianism. Therefore, they naturally favored the zither. The zither was a noble instrument, and improvements could be made through self-reflection. The strings could convey the kind feelings of one's heart. From Fushi's invention of the zither to Boya's era, the strings of the zither carried the earnest feelings of the noble. Compared to the zither, the performances by the young misses from earlier seemed to fall a tier below. There were basically no flaws in Princess Danyang's song. She sat in front of the zither, plucking and tugging at the strings. She was so practiced that there was no need to even look at the strings. This gave her an aura of being completely tuned into the performance, and it gave the performance a unique flavor. Her eyes would occasionally glance in Gu Shubai's direction, but the latter did not even open his eyes to look at her. Time and time again, this caused feelings of anxiety to well up inside her heart. Yu Fu slightly furrowed her brow. With her becoming anxious, the intent behind the song also changed. The melody that had been steady and reliable now had some unsteadiness brought about by the anxiety. Those unfamiliar with music could not tell, but those who were musically trained could hear it. Her state of mind was not tranquil. Was the reason that none dared to play this most refined zither is not just that it was difficult to control? Was it also difficult for people to hide their true feelings? Otherwise, the 7 young misses from noble families before her would have gone and done this first. The second prince thought to himself that this was not good. She was too impatient. If she did not perform, it would be the norm. However, if she was to lose face during this performance in the presence of these high-ranking officials and noble families, it would become a big problem. He quickly gave a look to the palace servants outside the hall. While the sound of the zither filled the air, a gust of wind suddenly blew into the hall, carrying the autumnal fragrance of rice flowers. Everyone looked out of the hall and saw a group of colorful butterflies flutter into the hall. Some of the butterflies gently landed on Princess Danyang's shoulder as if they had been drawn in by the sound of her music. The people in the hall were exceptionally surprised. This unexpected occurrence had completely covered up the flaws in her playing, and she was able to regain composure. The butterflies only came because the princess music sounds so natural. This subject is thoroughly impressed by princess ability. The son of some family suddenly stood up and praised Princess Danyang's ability, which caused Emperor Ning to smile brightly. Everyone else hastily began to heap on the praise, completely ignoring the butterflies that had been scattered by the wind. They were like leaves that had fallen on an autumn day. Imperial Consort Xian's expression was a little ugly. She had been wanting to use tonight to put her niece's abilities on display, but who knew that all of the glory would be stolen away by Princess Danyang. A butterfly landed next to Gu Jioga's foot. He was already a little inebriated and picked it up from the floor. The butterfly's wings were tattered. It quivered in his hand, but could not fly no matter how hard it tried. Yu Fu saw his movements and noticed the butterfly. She was instantly consumed with feelings of pity and carefully received the butterfly in her own hands. The butterfly is so pitiful. Gu Jiogu quietly scoffed and looked at Gu Shubai slightly jokingly. It's clear that this butterfly was raised by someone to be released at a specific moment. Why would any butterfly hurt itself like this and come to accompany the sound of music? These words were not at all tactful, and Gu Shubai immediately understood what he meant. His graceful brows slightly furrowed. To reduce these butterflies to such a sorry state for their own selfishness, this is the greatest offense to the zither. Truly playing the zither would be like Boya, who played a very refined, tall mountains and flowing water, or like Jikong, who played a very free and relaxed Guangling San at his execution, or like Liu Yushi, who played with an absolute peace of mind. It was not a tool to win favor with others. Princess Danyang was completely oblivious to the conversation between the brothers of the Gu family. She had been praised so much by others that she was rejoicing. It was only when she joyfully glanced over that she found that Gu Shubai was not looking at her. At her most glorious moment, why was he not watching? Gu Jiugu was talking to him about the matter of the butterflies. From Princess Danyang's angle, it looked as if Gu Shubai was looking at the butterfly in Yu Fu's palm. Thus a feeling of jealousy welled up. Of all the times that she could have Gu Shubai look at the butterfly, she had to do it now. Was this not clearly being done to her on purpose? Father Emperor! She suddenly cried out and pointed at Yu Fu, saying, all of the young misses present today have performed, but Sister Yu Fu has not. The cacophony of praise coming from those seated below slowly died down. Yu Fu had been pointed out by Princess Danyang, and now resembled a fawn that had just run into a stranger. Her eyes were opened wide in surprise. Emperor Ning was stunned. Yu Fu is young. How can she compare with you older girls, who are 16 and 17? She was only 12 years old. How could she perform in front of a hall full of aristocrats and not lose to the young misses who had painstakingly prepared for this? Moreover, with Princess Danyang's zither performance combined with the appearance of butterflies coming before, no matter how hard Yu Fu tried in her performance, she would inevitably end up being laughed at. Emperor Ning wanted to protect Gu Huaijiang's honor and subconsciously refuted the suggestion. Father Emperor, don't underestimate Yu Fu. She's really quite amazing. I heard Gui say that Yu Fu knows how to read, and even teacher Lin Fengmiao praises her for being smart. Father Emperor, how do you know that she doesn't have any talent for the zither, chess, calligraphy, or painting? Upon hearing his name brought up, Gui had a defeated look. Where was there any desire from Princess Danyang to see Yu Fu perform? She was clearly doing this for revenge. This was to get back at Gui for his mockery. Oh no, our little Yu Fu only learned to read and write. She hasn't learned anything else. But young Miss Jean has already displayed her calligraphy. She is 5 years older than little Yu Fu and will have much more strength in her writing. Little Yu Fu is unable to compare. Emperor Ning had initially wanted to refuse, but when he heard Princess Danyang's explanation, he believed that she had seen Yu Fu's talent. Yu Fu, you come and perform too. This is our first time seeing you, and also wish to see what sort of talent you have. Yu Fu's talent. Gu Huaijiang slightly lowered his head and thought to himself that she naturally did have a talent. It was also a talent that could shock everyone present. Detoxification. Could this be considered a talent? This was not easy to show off. Had he known that they would encounter this sort of situation, he should have had Yu Fu be like the young misses from other families, obediently learning some normal talents. Now, things were just great. Yu Fu not knowing how to do anything was a result of his failure as a father. Now, she was to make a fool of herself in the imperial palace. To be the father of a daughter, why was it so hard? While he was worrying about what excuse he could use to refuse Emperor Ning, he saw that Yu Fu had already stood up from her seat and obediently bowed. Understood. Then this girl will borrow Princess Zither to put on a performance. What? She also wanted to play the zither? Even members of Marquis Gu's manor looked at her in concern. Princess Danyang was nearly unable to control her emotions, nearly letting out a sneer in front of everyone. She had thought that Yu Fu was smart, but who knew that she was actually a complete moron? With her having just put on an exquisite performance, no matter what sort of performance Yu Fu put on, she would not stand out. Moreover, she would be performing on the same zither as she did? She really was exceptionally foolish. Emperor Ning wanted to stop her, not wanting her to look too bad. The words reached his lips, but could not come out. All right, you may begin. Yu Fu sat down at the table where the zither rested and had already drawn out some quiet sounds. She had not yet finished growing. Like a little snowball, she sat in front of the zither, which made Lord Qin, who was seated in front of the zither, laugh. Her arms were already short, and her clothes were quite thick. The people could not help but wonder, Would she even be able to reach out naturally? Even if she could, it would definitely affect the fluidity of her playing. She definitely would not do better than Princess Danyang. It seemed that Lord Marquis Gu's darling daughter would definitely be ruined and lose a great deal of face. Yufu sat upright and closed her eyes, thinking back to what she had learned during her childhood. At the same time, she was sneakily stretching her muscles under her small jacket. She did not want to get locked up later on and be unable to move her arms. Sitting there with her eyes closed, she could hear the whispers and anticipation in the imperial hall. It seemed as though they were all waiting to laugh at her. Following this, those sounds gradually became more and more distant, more and more unclear. In her mind, all that remained was a calm lake. The night was dark, and the winds were strong. The surface of the lake began to ripple from the wind. The distant mountains appeared vast and mighty. An idea suddenly came to mind, and she opened her eyes that were as clear as a limpid spring in autumn. They were calm and profound. Such a solemn expression very rarely appeared on her face. It did not look like one that a 12-year-old child should have. The discussions of those seated gradually fell silent. Gu Huaijiang suddenly recalled that she also had such a solemn expression when detoxifying him. Though her hands were soft and immature, they were not lacking in grace, as she lifted one as if holding a silver needle. A soft and hollow sound then came from the string, natural and free. The zither that was too big for her did not seem to require much effort from her. On the contrary, she seemed very adept. Princess Danyang's face had already begun to turn pale just a few moments into the song. Why was it that she seemed so free when playing? This was clearly her first time playing on this zither, yet it felt as though she was the zither's owner. The strings and body of the zither were creating a beautiful sound. Gu Shubai was smiling brightly. Watching Yufu's movements, he began to calm down. In the quiet night, the beautiful orchids of the valley quietly bloomed, and a gentle fragrance filled the beautiful landscape. Suddenly, the sound of the strings abruptly changed, like an owl letting out a sad cry, as it flew from a valley now devoid of orchids until it reached the distant mountains. Above the mountaintops, the moon, bright and round, hung in the dark blue sky. It illuminated the calm lake and vast mountains. Vast, solemn, majestic. Her fingers were becoming more and more nimble, and the strings now roared like thunder. The shocked spectators did not dare make another sound. She gradually approached the climax and simply closed her eyes. Going based on the feel of her fingers, she continued to play. Everything in her surroundings turned into a distant blur. At this moment, she was no longer sitting in Eastern Ling's imperial palace. Instead, she was seated beneath the vast moon. Gu Shubai also closed his eyes. When everything before him was dark, the sound of her music entered his heart even more clearly. In her heart, there were vast mountains, a bright moon, and a boundless sky. As for a normal girl, even if one played more excitedly, they would not be able to bring out the soul of the zither. Yet Yufu had done it. Her performance of Guan Shanyu had turned Princess Danyang's performance of Feng Qiuhuang into a joke. One came straight from the heart, while the other was hollow and shallow. It was the difference between clouds and mud. Princess Danyang's expression was particularly ugly. Suddenly, an amber Persian cat was seen walking into the hall. Who knew which member of the imperial harem had raised it for fun? A plan suddenly came to mind, and she gave a look to her servant, Diener. Ah, where did that cat come from? The spectators, who were immersed in Yufu's music as if it was a good meal or a fragrant wine, were instantly dragged back to reality by this shrill cry. With such a fright, the person playing the zither would surely have their state of mind disrupted. How about granting the title of County Princess? Everyone managed to collect their thoughts and found that it was a beautiful Persian cat. It was immediately clear that it was being raised by someone in the palace. It was not worth getting so worked up. Their enthusiasm for the brilliant performance had been disturbed by the shout of a stupid palace maid. It was truly disappointing. Wait a moment, the song was still going without the slightest hiccup. Everyone looked over at Yufu in the middle in surprise. Her little body was seated casually, and she continued to pluck the strings with her eyes closed. It seemed as though she had not been disturbed by the exclamation. This tranquility did not appear to be an act. Rather, it came from inside. Not only were there no flaws in her execution, but she was also playing more and more freely. Like a cold wind that blew through the vast mountain range under the moonlight, it suddenly disappeared. Compared to a 12-year-old child who could keep her composure, these officials and their families seated below appeared far more chaotic. Everyone began to return to their spots and found that the only one to have not been disturbed by that sudden shout was Gu Shubai. This heir to Marquis Gu's manor had civil and military skill, and he was accomplished in 4 scholarly arts. These people have known about this for quite some time. Seeing was many times better than hearing rumors, but his calmness made it clear that he was different from normal people. Princess Danyang stared at Yu Fu with her mouth slightly agape. How could this be? She was only 12 years old. How could she be so proficient at the zither? This was absolutely impossible. The eldest prince sat across from her and glanced at her with a smile. The second prince noticed the look in his eyes and fiercely tugged at Princess Danyang. Close your mouth. You're a dignified princess. How can you reveal an expression so unfitting for your position? Princess Danyang subconsciously obeyed. The lips that had lipstick applied were now tightly pressed together. However, tears began to well up in her eyes. Second brother, how could she? Since you've already lost, don't keep bringing it up. The second prince cut her off and glanced around. Waving his hand, he had Diener leave. He could not allow others to know that the palace maid who had let out that scream was one of Princess Danyang's people. Otherwise, she would end up the biggest laughingstock in the capital. Because she was losing to a 12-year-old child at the zither, the dignified princess had used such underhanded tricks to try and distract her. Princess Danyang could afford to lose face like this, but he, the second prince, could not. The eldest prince noticed Diener hastily retreating and waved behind his back. His personal servant leaned forward and also departed from the hall after being given some instructions. Yu Fu's fingers finally stopped, and the strings once again fell silent. She slowly opened her eyes and found that everyone in the hall was staring at her. Among them, there were a few who were looking at her very warmly. Aside from her older brothers from Marquis Gu's manor, there was also one that came from Inshua. That person, why was he staring at her like this? Yu Fu could not figure it out. Emperor Ning had already stood up from his seat and shook his head in admiration. Amazing, that performance was truly too amazing. Marquis Gu has the right idea when it comes to raising a daughter. Even we must blush in shame. Has the right idea when it comes to raising a daughter? Gu Huaijiang blushed in shame. This was also his first time finding out. Not only did Yu Fu know how to play the zither, but she played it this well. This was completely unrelated to his ability to raise a daughter. Gu Huaijiang had a warrior's disposition and wanted to immediately deny this. However, he noticed Yu Fu stealthily winking at him. He suddenly understood. He could not deny having taught Yu Fu the zither in front of so many people. If he did, Emperor Ning would definitely continue to ask about her background, which would stir unnecessary trouble. Your Majesty's praise is misplaced. Shubai taught Yu Fu to play the zither at home. This subject also did not think that she would be so smart and learn to play it in such a short period of time. This was not merely learning it. This was the pinnacle of the craft. It was supernatural. Yu Fu had been in the capital for less than half a year. If she was able to become so proficient in the zither in such a short span of time, what was she if not a prodigy? To be able to be the beloved daughter of Marquis Gu's manor, she truly was not ordinary. We absolutely must reward Yu Fu with something. Yu Fu, what do you want? How about we grant you the title of County Princess? What do you think? Once Emperor Ning had spoken, the entire hall fell silent. He was treating the title of County Princess as if it was something like a kitten or a puppy, something that could be rewarded to a little girl. To obtain the title of County Princess based on one's exceptional skill with the zither, no other example could be found in this world, right? The people quietly pondered this. It was possible that this was just an excuse offered up by Emperor Ning, and his true goal was to honor Marquis Gu's manor even more. They initially thought that Marquis Gu's manor had already reached the pinnacle of favor, but reality proved that as long as Emperor Ning wished, there was no limit. Your Majesty, we are asking Yu Fu. You stay silent. Emperor Ning interrupted Gu Huaijiang and continued to look at Yu Fu. How could a 12-year-old little girl possibly reject such a great honor? Everyone thought that Yu Fu would definitely accept. She, however, decisively shook her head and refused. Your Majesty, isn't the title of County Princess something that can only be granted to a daughter of the imperial family? I am a daughter of Marquis Gu's manor. You are mistaken. This was the first time that someone had dared to directly say that Emperor Ning was wrong to his face. Not only did Emperor Ning not get angry, but he actually began to laugh. He merely treated them as harmless words from a child. Sure enough, she is still a young girl. Even though she is young, she does not seek benefits. She is very knowledgeable. Marquis Gu, this daughter of yours has been raised well. It turned out that this so-called county princess was just a trick employed by Emperor Ning to test Yu Fu. He was testing this young girl from an uncertain background for Gu Huaijiang to see whether she was truly harmless or just pretending to be harmless in the pursuit of the position of young miss of Marquis Gu's manor. Now that he had ascertained that Yu Fu did not have any such ambitions, he felt at ease. To Eastern Ling, Marquis Gu's manor was unlike other houses. He could not allow someone from another country with ulterior motives sneak in. Gu Shubai lifted his gaze and looked over. The father and son of the Yin family were staring at Yu Fu like hawks staring at a sheep on an open plain. He and Gu Huaijiang exchanged a look and reached a tacit understanding. Emperor Ning's test of Yu Fu could not have happened for no reason. There must have been someone who had spoken badly of her in front of him. Completely distracted, Yu Fu returned to her seat, but Emperor Ning's expression suddenly changed as he looked in Princess Danyang's direction. Just now, which palace maid was it that was shouting and being so improper? Princess Danyang shuddered and barely managed to maintain her composure, feigning absolute ignorance. That person had already been directed out by the second prince. With the hall being chaotic earlier, nobody would look closely at which palace maid it was. As long as she did not admit it, Emperor Ning would likely not know who it was. All of the palace maids in the hall dropped to their knees and silently endured Emperor Ning's wrath. However, nobody made a single sound. Your Majesty, please spare us. It was not us servants who shouted. All of the palace maids said that they were not the ones to shout. However, Emperor Ning remembered the origin of that voice. It had come from near Princess Danyang. If it was not a palace maid who had shouted, could it be that she was the one who shouted? Father Emperor, please calm down. The eldest prince suddenly stood up from his seat and said with a smile, Father Emperor, son personally saw the palace maid who had shouted retreat. Likely figuring that she had caused trouble, she did not dare to linger inside the hall. Son has already sent someone to catch her. Would Father Emperor please be at ease? He had seen Diener shout. Princess Danyang's heart was beating like a drum. Once Diener was caught, outsiders would definitely mock her for deliberately trying to sabotage Yu Fu. The eldest prince and the second prince were in direct competition, and she was the second prince's younger sister. The eldest prince would definitely be happy to see her make a fool of herself. This is more like it. Emperor Ning's expression improved quite a bit, pointing to the eldest prince and saying, We can't be bothered to deal with it. Once you've caught the palace maid, you must severely punish her. You can't be lenient. Yes, Father Emperor. The eldest prince did not say whom that palace maid served. He merely agreed and sat back down. The imperial banquet continued. It was just that tonight's focal point had been shifted from the earlier young misses to Yu Fu. Of the officials and madams who entered the palace, quite a few sent people to send their kind wishes and invite Yu Fu over to chat. Like the flower in a game of drum and flower, going around and meeting the various madams. Seeing that she was getting along well with the female guests, it was like looking at a child with their mother. One was doting, and the other was obedient and cute. By the time that Yu Fu was returned to Gu Huaijiang's side, she was smiling radiantly. Bringing her hands forward, she swayed them slightly. It was a feast for the eyes with many kinds of jewels, as many beautiful bracelets were hanging from her arms. Head General, look. Gu Huaijiang was dazed by this sight and was initially stunned. He then smiled and said, Were these given to you by those madams? Do you remember who gave you which one? He felt a little regretful. He should not have allowed Yu Fu to leave earlier, and he should have reminded her not to accept any gifts. Her performance tonight had stunned everyone present, and there were quite a few people with their sights set on her. Emperor Ning's test made him feel even more threatened. As for these madams who got along well with Yu Fu, they mostly represented their family's influence. With Yu Fu accepting their gifts, it meant that there was a tacit agreement. This agreement would disrupt the low profile that he had always maintained. But this could not be blamed on Yu Fu. She was still young. It was his fault as the father for being negligent. Gu Jiugu furrowed his brow and lowered his voice. Yu Fu, you should discuss this with us next time before accepting things from others. Those madams gifting things to you is not truly because they like you. Instead, it's because they have something to request of father. Once these words came out, Yu Fu's smile momentarily faltered. Second brother, am I really that unreliable of a person in your eyes? Gu Jiugu was shocked and subconsciously looked at Gu Shubai. He maintained his handsome smile and looked completely relaxed when it came to Yu Fu. He was like Gu Xiang and Gu Yi, not at all worried that Yu Fu would do anything wrong. He was the only one. Fortunately, Yu Fu did not care and merely pointed at her hand and said, "These were all given to me by the young misses from other families, and I also gave them some things." She opened up her own pouch. Before setting out, it had been filled with colorful gems around the size of pigeon eggs. Now, all that remained was an amber cat's eye. If it was just some contact between young girls, it was completely unrelated to the officials. How is our little Yu Fu so smart? Knowing that she can only accept gifts from young misses and knowing to give return gifts. Gu Shubai's voice was filled with a doting tone, and Gu Xiang gave him a dissatisfied look. Eldest brother, little Yu Fu is how we call her. You can't copy us. Yu Fu already liked him the most, yet he was copying their pet name for Yu Fu. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi exchanged a look. At this moment, there was one word clearly in their eyes. Shameless. Gu Shubai looked back at them with a smile, his eyes saying, "There are some things that are inconvenient to say here. I'll take good care of you two brats when we get back." The two brats hastily sat properly and obediently, no longer daring to complain about anything. When Lu Rui was bullying you earlier, those young misses did not help you, yet you were still willing to interact with them. Do you not feel sad about it? I don't. They also did not help young Miss Lu in bullying me. This is already enough. Gu Shubai and Yu Fu began whispering amongst themselves once more, leaving Gu Jiugu on his own to the side. His expression was a little sullen. It seemed as though he suddenly understood why Yu Fu liked their eldest brother the most. Just like when Yu Fu had been playing the zither and that palace maid had let out that wild scream. Only Gu Shubai had remained entranced by the sound of the zither. This would be mutual appreciation? Gu Huaijiang glanced at him and revealed a doting smile that was rarely seen, patting him on the head. Jiugu, pear blossom wine that was just brought out. Try some. He knew that Gu Jiugu loved drinking wine. Gu Jiugu unconsciously lifted his golden cup, and the full cup began to sway with his movements, nearly spilling the wine. Just look at how distracted he was. Be wary of the Yin family. It was only after the imperial banquet came to an end and everyone had returned to the manor that they let out a sigh of relief. Little Yu Fu, I've been holding it in for a long time. Quickly tell us, who exactly did you learn to play the zither from? Upon returning to the manor, Gui circled tightly around Yu Fu while asking this question. It was not just him, as everyone, including Gu Huaijiang, wanted to know this. I learned it from my master. Yu Fu replied with a half-truth. The truth behind it was that as a princess, she could begin learning the zither from a young age. This was not limited to the zither and included all of the refined things that all proper girls should learn. She had learned all of those things under strict guidance. But truly being able to grasp the emotions of the song was something that she had learned after being taught by Sun Qi. Everyone came to a sudden realization. The medical god of legends was an exceptional person. Thus it was possible that he exceptionally skilled at the zither, just like the legendary Bo Ya. Gu Shubai looked at her as if he had something on his mind. When her song had reached its climax, that style did indeed feel like one belonging to a hermit secluded in the mountains. But the style from the start clearly originated from the imperial palace. It was an ancient and noble grace. She had not told the truth. At the very least, she had not told the full truth. Little Yufu, why didn't you tell us? When Princess Danyang called out your name, we were given quite the fright. To this moment, Gui was still frightened. Yufu knowing how to play the zither was something that even the members of Marquis Gu's manor did not know. Princess Danyang definitely would not know. However, she deliberately had Yufu go and perform in front of so many people. Was this not done for the sake of troubling her? Yufu innocently said, "But you guys have never asked me." This was indeed true. They had always tacitly believed that Yufu did not know how to do anything. It was only after she said that she wished to learn to read that everyone found out how cultured she was. It was not their fault that these were Easternlings' customs. Rather, it was just that it was already amazing for young misses to be proficient in the four arts. Of course, they never thought that Yufu would already be proficient at the age of 12. Princess Danyang was absolutely infuriated by eldest brother. His Majesty hinted at eldest brother's marriage once more to father and was refused. Princess Danyang must be quite anxious to make use of this ploy. Poor Yufu, being pushed to the point of needing to show off. Gu Jiugu suddenly fell silent, finding the current situation to be very detrimental to Marquis Gu's manor. Princess Danyang has the heart of a young girl and is not cause for concern. It's just that from Yufu unexpectedly falling into the water to Yao Yu's appearance at West Lake, I keep feeling that there is someone watching our Marquis Gu's manor from the shadows. His Majesty's attitude tonight was also strange. It was indeed strange. It seemed as though he wanted to ingratiate himself with Marquis Gu's manor, yet was also suspicious and envious of them. Everyone looked toward Gu Huaijiang. It had to be said that Gu Huaijiang, having spent multiple decades with him, understood Emperor Ning better than anyone else. He let out a sigh and wanted to avoid this topic. He did not want to reveal too much to the children. His Majesty is getting old. The conflict between the eldest prince and the second prince is getting more and more obvious. The generals and officials do not get along in court, and the people are uneasy. If someone was to provoke him, it is inevitable that he will become suspicious. Since ancient times, whenever a ruler is faced with a great general who commands large armies, when have they not boiled the hound after catching the hare? Gu Huaijiang had always kept a low profile and never flaunted his military achievements because he was considering this line of reasoning. I keep feeling that this can't be unrelated to the Prime Minister's manner. When Yufu fell into the water, I was present, and Yin Shua's appearance was truly suspicious. Yufu is very young, yet His Majesty is suspicious of her. It is true that there was her performance tonight, but there are also signs of someone's meddling. Gu Shubai had always been thorough, and his suspicions of Yin Shuai were well-reasoned, which lined up perfectly with what Gu Huaijiang was feeling. He nodded. Father was also thinking like this. It's just that Yin Shua is even harder to predict than his father, yet His Majesty likes him very much and will likely assign him an important task. This important task was most likely to follow in his father's footsteps and have Yin Shua take the role of replacing Prime Minister Yin. It's whatever with that Yin Shua, but I think that the eldest prince and second prince are a little too diligent with their visits to our manor. The two don't train properly and always try to get close to Yufu. Gu Xiang let out a snort. He always felt that the two of them had bad designs for Yufu. He suddenly thought of something. Father, could it be because they frequently come to the manor that His Majesty is worried that you will help one of the princes commit? Gu Jiugu rushed to cover his mouth, not allowing him to finish his sentence. Gu Xiang then tried a few times to protest. That sound was quite similar to when Yufu's Pangjiu became miserable. His barks would become sad whimpers. Gu Huaijiang glanced over at him. He understood Gu Xiang and Gu Yi's dispositions very well, and he did not have high hopes that they would mature overnight. On the contrary, he hoped that they and Yufu could continue to live their lives without a care in the world. There's no need to worry too much. I will find a chance to request that His Majesty take back my tiger tally. Between Prime Minister Yin and me, His Majesty trusts me a little more. After all, if he, Gu Huaijiang, wanted to commit treason and rebel, based on the soldiers under his command and his prestige in the military, it would have happened long ago. The most important thing was, when you guys run into Prime Minister Yin and his son in the future, just be a little careful, especially with Yin Shuo.
Yes.
After all important matters had been taken care of, Gui poked Yufu's arm. Then do you know how to embroider?
Yes.
Do you know how to dance?
Yes.
Do you know how to play chess? This was finally something that she should not know, right? Also yes. Too many things had happened during the imperial banquet for the members of Marquis Gu's manor to digest. It was because of this that nobody noticed that Gu Hanemo and Gu Wenqing did not return the previous night. In a place with as strict an upbringing as Marquis Gu's manor, this was truly unheard of. Oh no, oh no, third and fourth brother went out to drink floral wine last night and have not returned. When they return later, father will definitely beat them to death. Gu Hanemo and Gu Wenqing still had not returned, and Gui was already making a huge fuss. He even went so far as to put on a skit with Gu Xiang displaying how they would plead for forgiveness. Little Yu Fu, you come up with some ideas too. Father listens to you the most. Your words will definitely have more weight than ours. The two of them were too immersed in their play, and Yao Lan had a confused expression from watching them. Sister Lian Bai, what is floral wine? The pure Yao Lan did not understand Gu Xiang's words and turned to ask Lian Bai. This left Lian Bai blushing furiously. Yu Fu heard her and hastily went to stop her. Don't listen to fifth brother and sixth brother's nonsense. With third brother's cold and expressionless face, how could he possibly go and drink floral wine? When Gu Xiang and Gui heard her say this, they felt that it was quite reasonable. That's right. Then it must be fourth brother who took third brother out to drink floral wine. It's hard to believe. Fourth brother usually just stays in without making a sound, yet he's actually so bold. Yu Fu, young miss, third young sir and fourth young sir have returned and are now in the main hall. Yin Lin and Yin Shui, who had been sent out to inquire about the situation, had returned and reported this information while wheezing. Yu Fu hastily left the western wing. She wanted to go to the main hall to see. If things really were as Gu Xiang and Gui had described, she would be able to calm Gu Huaijiang a little. Little Yu Fu, don't run so fast. Wait for us. The two followed along behind her. When they arrived outside the main hall's courtyard, they happened to run into Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugo. They had also rushed over upon hearing the news. In the middle of the hall, Gu Hanemo and Gu Wenqing were kneeling on the ground with their backs to the main door. One had a very straight back and a cold face that seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. When he looked at Gu Wenqing, there seemed to be a faint hint of anger. The other one had their head slightly lowered to avoid his gaze. He did not have his usual gentle expression, and it seemed that he had done something wrong. Third brother, fourth brother, where did you two go last night? Gui was the one with the least patience, immediately shouting after bursting into the room. Gu Huaijiang just happened to be coming in from a side room. Everyone quickly fell silent and moved to their seats. Speak, what happened last night? Gu Huaijiang sat down in his chair and quietly spoke with one hand resting on the armrest. His gentle tone carried a natural solemnness. It gave off an oppressive feeling and made people who kneeled before him feel like it was difficult to breathe. Gu Hamo's expression did not change. After you left for the imperial palace, Sun was worried that fourth brother would be bored and went to find him, who knew that he had secretly taken his horse out and left the manor. Sun followed him out of the city and found that he had gone to an unlicensed brothel outside the city. Unlicensed brothel? Gu Xiang and Gu Yi glanced at each other in shock. Who knew that their guess would be correct? Fourth brother really had gone to drink floral wine. Wenqing, what do you have to say? Gu Huaijiang did not rush to get angry. He understood his son. Gu Wenqing was not a licentious person. Gu Wenqing, who had kept his head down, finally raised his head. Father, what third brother said is true. Sun did indeed leave the city, but it was not an unlicensed brothel. Instead, I want to find Yu Guan. He is an actor that Sun saved in the past. He's someone from the troupe that came to our manor to perform during the Dragon Boat Festival. An actor from the troupe. It was a man. Gui inhaled sharply and shoved his hand into his mouth in horror. It turned out that fourth brother did not just go to drink floral wine, but he had also gone to pick up a man. Yu Guan was a familiar name. Yu Fu remembered this person. She had previously met him during the Dragon Boat Festival. In her memory, he was a person with a lithe and graceful body and a face that had a feminine prettiness. His voice was also sounded very nice. When Gu Hanemo had found them previously, he had been very unhappy, saying things like actors are of a lower class. Who knew that Gu Wenqing would be caught by him this time? Gu Huaijiang furrowed his brow. What were you looking for him for? Sun just wanted to go and drink with him and chat about opera and current events, nothing else. Yu Guan was previously a child of a government official's family. He only became an actor after his family fell to ruin. He has followed that troupe around and has seen the world. That's why Sun will occasionally go to chat with him. So that was the case. Gu Huaijiang said, you were just going to chat with him. Why not just tell your third brother before going out? Why act so secretive? Acting so furtively would naturally arouse suspicion. Gu Wenqing glanced over at Gu Hanemo, then lowered his head. Third brother doesn't like Yu Guan, saying that we as sons of a proper family should not associate with performers. Hearing him insult Yu Guan like this, Sun got angry and began to argue with him. This resulted in us missing the closing time of the city gates and could only rest outside the city. No wonder the two did not return the previous night. Gu Hamo's personality was very resolute. He felt that performers were people of a lower class and would affect the unblemished reputation of Marquis Gu's manor. That was why he so resolutely opposed Gu Wenqing's association with Yu Guan. When it came to this, Gu Huaijiang still stood on Gu Hanmo's side after a bit of deliberation. There are people in court who are keeping a very close eye on our family, and they are anxious that they won't be able to find any problems. At this time, don't go and complicate matters. Your third brother is right. In the future, don't have associate with that performer. Though he said this, he did not punish Gu Wenqing. You can all go back. Leaving the main hall, the young ones gathered around Gu Wenqing and returned to his courtyard. They were likely going to comfort him, while the three older ones stayed behind. Third brother, this time, you were in the wrong. Fourth brother just wanted to go and chat with Yu Guan. Why bother with criticizing him so harshly? Gu Jiugu himself was a person with a flighty personality. He only became a little more reserved after Yu Fu arrived at the manor. It was natural that he felt that there was nothing wrong. Gu Hanemo coldly looked at him. Second brother would be best off looking after yourself first. I've disliked your Yao Yu or Yao Xing for quite some time, but there's nothing that I can do about you. Eldest brother, take good care of him. He gave Gu Shubai a look, then pulled out his sword and felt its weight before heading off to train once more. Gu Jiugu was gnashing his teeth behind him. That brat? Gu Huaijiang's thoughts, fourth brother, are you all right? The brats gathered in Gu Wenqing's courtyard and sat around to comfort him. Fourth brother, did third brother hit you? This was Gu Xiang. He was most concerned about practical matters. Fourth brother, did you really only go to chat with Yu Gu and nothing else? This was Gu Yi, and Gu Wenqing shot him a rarely seen glare. His eyes seemed to say get lost. Fourth brother, don't feel too down. Aside from third brother, we all feel that you did nothing wrong. This was Yu Fu. She knew that Gu Wenqing currently needed moral support more than anything else. He needed someone who could understand and support him. Gu Wenqing gratefully looked at her. Izumi came in with some hot water for him to wipe his face. He received the face towel and slowly wiped his face, then suddenly let out a sigh. Yu Fu, don't console me. Father has decided to no longer allow me to meet Yu Guan. He also feels that what I've done was wrong and should not have any associations with someone as lowly as a performer. That's not it. The head general is not that sort of a person. If he really felt that you had done something wrong, he would have had you punished. Isn't that right? Once these words came from Yu Fu, he could not help but pause. That's right. When I got some pastry in Yu Fu's hair, Father caned me 10 times. If Father really felt that you did something wrong, Father would have caned you at least 30 times. This was indeed the truth. Not only had he secretly gone to visit a performer, but he also did not return the previous night. To not punish such a grave mistake, it was clear what Gu Huaijiang truly felt. But Father has still decided that I am no longer permitted to continue seeing Yu Guan. That was the thing that he felt most miserable over. Head General has his reasons for doing things like this. Fourth brother, listen to what I'm about to tell you. Yu Fu told Gu Wenqing about the happenings from the imperial banquet. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi occasionally chimed in to add bits of information. The most important addition was about how stirring Yu Fu's performance had been. Gu Wenqing's expression finally revealed a bit of joy. So that was the case. If you say it like that, when the Prime Minister's manor finally stops keeping an eye on us, I will still have a chance to meet you, Guan, right? That's right. But who knows just what strange ideas the father and son from the Prime Minister's manor are coming up with. Almost everyone knew that Eastern Ling's top general and Prime Minister did not get along. Prime Minister Yin was always trying to catch Gu Huaijiang making a mistake. He wanted to prove his achievements. It even went as far as colluding with enemies to commit treason. Gu Huaijiang had always just endured and let it go. He had always tried to treat him well. However, he could never melt that heart that was as cold as ice. Did you see that? There truly is a problem with that girl from an unclear background. In the study of the Prime Minister's manor, Yin sat behind a heavy rosewood desk. His figure melded in with the shadows. Today's weather was overcast. Rays of light passed through the window, but were not enough to illuminate the large study. Yin Shuo stood below a large bookcase, and a muffled grunt came from his throat. Girl from an unclear background? He did not particularly like it when others used these words to speak of Yu Fu, even if that person was his father. Yin glanced up at him and felt that there was something a little off about him, but he could not figure out what this was exactly. Yu Fu is young, yet her skill with the zither could cleanly beat even Princess Danyang. This was definitely a skill that she has trained in since a young age. Marquis Gu said that she only began to learn from Gu Shubai half a year ago when she entered the capital. It truly is a preposterous idea. Seemingly realizing that his reply had been too lacking, Yin Shuo added this bit. Only then did Yin nod his head in satisfaction. What you said is correct, but it's a little too unlikely. As a girl in the imperial family, and more importantly the princess born of His Majesty's Empress, Princess Danyang has been learning the zither since childhood. No matter how hard Yu Fu worked, she should not be able to beat Princess Danyang by that much at such a young age. Could it be that she is also a princess and has been learning the zither from a young age? After Yin finished speaking, he himself wanted to laugh and let out a quiet chuckle. Who knew whether he was laughing at himself or laughing at Gu Huaijiang and Yu Fu? Yin Shuo faintly laughed. That's impossible. However, there could be some influence on learning from the family, or someone deliberately trained her from a young age. Those are both possible. You mean to say that Gu Huaijiang deliberately trained an adopted daughter with no blood relations to him to try and achieve some sort of goal? Yin squinted his eyes and exuded a cold aura like a hawk. In the shadows, he was hard to figure out. He fell silent for a while, then slowly nodded his head. It could be that she had not been forced to perform by Princess Danyang and intended to make a grand show of her skills? No. Sun paid attention to the reactions of Marquis Gu's family. Their reactions at that time. Yin Shuo carefully thought back and tried to find the best adjectives. They were extremely shocked and very worried. It seemed as though they did not want Yu Fu to perform. It also seemed as though they didn't know that she knew how to play the zither. Didn't know? If Gu Huaijiang didn't know that she knew how to play the zither, her background is even stranger. Could it be that she was born in Immortal's Valley? Then where are her parents? If that's not the case, why are there no signs from a time before she entered Immortal's Valley? With Yin Shuo having said this matter was becoming even more confusing. But he still felt that this was more likely to have been something deliberately planned by Gu Huaijiang, using Yu Fu to achieve some sort of goal. What could that goal be? Have you heard that the eldest prince and the second prince have been frequently going to Marquis Gu's manor, and both seem to be rather close with her? The eldest prince and the second prince both wished to win over Gu Huaijiang. This was a secret that everyone tacitly understood. After all, Lord Marquis Gu had control over the army and was more than capable of shaking the foundations of Eastern Ling. Gaining his support was the same as success. But they never went to get close with the heir, Gu Shubai, or any of the other young sirs of Marquis Gu's manor. Why would they get close to Yu Fu? Yin Shuo slightly furrowed his brow and had something of a bad feeling about this. He did not like Yu Fu having a group of men circling around her, especially those that were many years older than her. For some reason, not long after the Mid-Autumn Festival, a letter came from Jinling saying that Gu Shubai and his brother's aunt, Madame Su, would be returning to the capital to visit the family. This Madame Su was the one whose birthday Gu Shubai had gone to celebrate when Yu Fu first arrived in the capital. Eldest sister heard that His Majesty wanted to talk about your marriages. Thus she could not hold back and said that she would bring that Yunyan girl to come and take a look for you. He said you guys, but he was looking at Gu Shubai and Gu Jiagu. This was unrelated to the younger ones. He then said to Yu Fu, she also knows about you. She said that she had been wanting to see you, and now she has the chance. With that girl Yunyan coming, you'll have a girl to keep you company, which puts me at ease. Yu Fu had occasionally heard Gu Xiang and the others bring this up. Their aunt, Madame Su, had been widowed for many years and had a daughter, Su Yunyan, who was 16 years old. Since Marquis Gu's manor had a style of raising sons strictly and doting on daughters, the eldest young Miss Su ended up becoming extremely pampered. When Gu Xiang and the others brought up Su Yunyan, their expressions were a little strange. It seemed that they did not like her very much. Gu Shubai and Gu Jiagu both had people that they liked and were not at all interested in discussing marriage. Hearing that Madame Su would be coming to join in the liveliness, the two mysteriously furrowed their brows. What, are you unhappy that your aunt is coming? Gu Huaijiang shot a glare over, and the two relaxed their faces and forced out a smile. We're happy. It's natural that we're happy. If they said that they were unhappy, was that not just openly asking for a beating? Yu Fu was also very happy. Aside from the members of Marquis Gu's manor, Madame Su was the person closest to them. She naturally also wanted to meet her. This would finally have more of a family feel. Little Yu Fu, you're happy, but eldest brother and second brother will be suffering quite a bit. It might be the same for third brother. Third brother will be 18 this year too. Leaving the main hall, Gu Xiang and Gu Yi boisterously began to discuss their older brothers. Gu Wenqing stood behind them to help keep watch and ensure that Gu Shubai and the others did not hear their discussion. Yu Fu was originally elated to hear that Su Yunyan would be coming, as the two could play together. Hearing Gu Xiang say what he did, she no longer felt as happy. What if Madame Su wanted to immediately make a decision on Gu Shubai's marriage and engage him to a girl that they did not know? How could that go well? Will Madame Su force eldest brother to get married? She asked the most important question. Gu Wenqing noticed the concern on her little face and seemed to realize something. He faintly smiled but did not speak. It very well might happen. You don't know this, but Ani really dotes on us brothers. She is also a widow, so what else is there to do but play matchmaker? Even more frighteningly, she previously brought up the idea with father of having Su Yunyan married to eldest brother. What? While Yu Fu walked along, she was nearly tripped up by some stones beneath her feet. Fortunately, Gu Xiang was alert and quick to act, catching her in time. Su Yunyan was Gu Shubai's cousin. How could she get married to him? Gu Xiang gave Gui a shove. Be a little more objective when you speak. What do you mean by married to eldest brother? I remember Ani saying that she wanted her to marry one of us. She never said that it had to be eldest brother. Gui laughed deviously. If not to eldest brother, could it be you? You like her? Ani really liked you, so she really might just have her marry you. Ha ha ha. Gu Xiang's face turned red from hearing this and angrily began to hit him. Let me give you and your filthy mouth a beating. You're the one that likes her. Bless our dear aunt. She wants to marry her off to you. The two began to fight on the pebble path, and Gu Wenqing helplessly shook his head. He then patted Yu Fu's shoulder. What's wrong? Weren't you really happy to hear that Auntie and Yunyan are coming? Why are you no longer happy now? Could it be because she was worried that Yunyan would get married to eldest brother? It's fine. I'm happy. It's just that I'm wondering what sort of gift I should give to Madame Su and Sister Yunyan. Yu Fu barely managed to smile and raised her head. However, her true feelings did not come out. Gu Huaijiang respected his eldest sister so much. How could she not welcome them? Marquis Gu's manor was also where Madame Su grew up. Moreover, the Gu family had 6 sons. Madame Su did not necessarily have her sights set on Gu Shubai. What was she worrying about now? But for some reason, when she heard that Princess Danyang wanted to marry Gu Shubai, she felt extremely unhappy and even began to dislike Princess Danyang. But if it was Gu Jiagu or Gu Hanemo getting married, Yu Fu thought for a bit and found that she did not seem to feel down. Why exactly was this? Gu Wenqing saw her tilt her head. He did not know what she was thinking, thus he gently tapped her head. What are you thinking about so deeply at such a young age? Is fourth brother allowed to know? He felt as though there was something on Yu Fu's mind. There was a secret, and that was why that person was quietly standing there without making a sound. Yu Fu raised her head and saw Gu Wenqing's gentle and handsome face. His kind eyes were watching her and waiting for her reply. There were some things that she instinctively could not say. There were some embarrassing things that were also a little strange. But if it was Gu Wenqing, it should probably be fine, right? On the day that she first set foot in Marquis Gu's manor, Gu Wenqing had smiled and extended his hand to invite her out to eat. From that moment, she knew that she could rely on him. Fourth brother, I have something to tell you, but don't tell anyone else. Drowning sorrows and alcohol in the thriving capital, there were bridges and flowing water, and there were buildings next to the river. Of the buildings next to the river, there were quite a few brothels. Throughout the streets, the scent of makeup could be smelled. In one of these streets, a two-story building elegantly stood. Hanging from the balcony on the second floor was a cyan lantern. Mixed with the autumn colors, it looked like a nice piece of jade. The furnishings inside were very simple and subdued. In one room, there was a low bed, a side table, and a Bacaro tea set. In the spot next to the window, Gu Jiugu sat next to the window, his body casually splayed out on the couch. The cup of wine that he held exuded a cool fragrance. Tap-tap like a spring rain hitting the roof. The sound of a girl's slow steps came from the stairs. Yaoyu walked up with some pastries and was dressed far more gorgeously than usual. There was also a hint of anger on her brow. Second young sir coming at such a critical moment. Is there no worry that Yaoyu won't stir up some trouble for second young sir and ruin your reputation? What? Even you are going to ask me to leave? Yaoyu covered her mouth and smiled. Though she said this, her actions were not at all ambiguous. Carefully arranging the exquisite pastries, she then glanced at him. She was using her actions to express how much she welcomed his arrival. It was not just welcoming. Ever since that moment at Westlake, Yaoyu had not dared to seek him out. She did not even dare to receive any guests. She just spent day after day sitting inside this small building, waiting for him, yearning for him. Who knew that he really would end up coming? It's nothing that important. There are people in court who are envious of father's position. They're just spending their days keeping an eye on our Marquis Gu's manor. Me coming here to your place is nothing unbecoming. Even if it was, it could not affect father's situation. Yaoyu had followed Gu Jiugu for a few years and understood his personality. He seemed to be a free and unconstrained person. He was really quite protective when it came to the reputation of Marquis Gu's manor. He always took Marquis Gu's words to heart. This time, he had gone against the situation and come here. Upon arriving, he began to drink. There was definitely something making him unhappy. Since second young sir came today and asked specifically for Yaoyu, it wouldn't just be to have me watch you drink, right? One person drinking is to drown one's sorrows. Two people drinking together is more fun. She walked over to the bed with the wine kettle and sat down like Gu Jiugu, spreading her dress out like the wings of a butterfly. Come, drink. When the wine kettles were clinked together, the sound it made was crisp. The sweet smell filled the air, and a cold gust of wind blew in from the outside. There was a feeling that some freedom had been lost with the gust of wind. Gu Jiugu liked coming to find Yaoyu. It was not just because she played the pipa very well, but it was more so that she had a very kind and considerate personality. As long as he did not bring it up, she would not ask. Like this, the two got along very comfortably. After 3 rounds of drinking, he took advantage of the alcohol to voice his feelings. You know, of the people who spout nonsense to you. I am one of them. During the Mid-Autumn Festival's imperial banquet, His Majesty brought up the matter of my marriage. Fortunately, it was refused by father. Yaoyu's hand froze, and some wine dripped out from the corner of her mouth. She hastily used her sleeve to wipe it away. Father said that he wanted us to marry the girl that we like. He had never cared much for marrying according to social status, yet Ani will be coming. She wants to speak up about eldest brothers and my marriage. It's really annoying. He did not find Madame Su to be annoying. Instead, it was the discussion of marriage itself that he found extremely annoying. Yaoyu thought for a bit, then said, Is it because second young sir, you do not have a person that you like and are worried that Madame Su would choose a young miss whom you do not like? For example, young Miss Su. Is that right? Gu Jiugu lifted his head, his Adam's apple quivering. You have always understood my feelings. Even if I don't say anything, you still know. Yao Yu relaxed a little and revealed a slight smile. He did not have a person that he liked, then she was still the only girl at his side. This was enough. But you were not completely correct. I have a girl that I like, but she does not seem to like me. No, that's also not right. Due to the alcohol, his thoughts were becoming a little messy. It might be that she doesn't yet understand what it means to like in a romantic sense. It's not that she doesn't like me. It's more that she already likes someone else. Not understanding romantic feelings. Liking him but liking someone else more. Yao Yu suddenly figured something out and probed. Could it be that the girl's second young sir likes is young Miss Yu Fu? The wine kettle that Gu Jiugu was about to drink from froze in midair. In the end, it was depressingly put down. The room suddenly fell silent. You truly do know me best. Though he liked Yu Fu, it started out in the same way that an older brother would like a younger sister. It was only after that night when she had pushed herself to stop Gu Huaijiang from punishing him, despite her fever, that some unique feelings began to develop. After that, he slowly began to understand her more. It was only then that he found that she did not just possess the natural cuteness of a child, but she also had some things that most girls did not. She was natural and magnanimous. No matter who tried to curry favor with her, she would not become pampered or spoiled. Her heart was filled with kindness. This was even the case when it brought her no benefits, like with those maidservants. She even showed great care for that small puppy. That young girl's brightness and grace, like a bud in spring that had not yet blossomed, were slowly beginning to develop. He could already predict that she would grow into a beautiful flower in the near future, and she would attract a great number of butterflies. Just in front of him was a strong competitor. The person that she liked was the one she called eldest brother. Yao Yu put down her wine kettle and lowered her gaze. The corners of her lips curled up, but it was a smile that was filled with pain. Who best to marry? From Jinling to Linen was not too far. It was just a few days away along the waterway, and Madame Su and her daughter quickly arrived. On this day, Gu Huaijiang sent Qian, the steward who had been with him the longest, with Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu to receive them at Du. After the low-ranking official responsible for Du saw this situation, he knew that the seemingly normal trade boat actually had a madam from Marquis Gu's manor seated inside. He personally rushed to the front to help Madame Su and her daughter off the boat before rushing around to help carry the luggage. Madame Su was 3 years older than Gu Huaijiang. Because she was a widow, she wore a plain brown jacket with a cyan quilt wrapped around her. She had a very dignified and proper appearance. Comparatively, the girl in the pink dress next to her was tall and graceful. As for her accessories, she was not missing a single thing. She was dressed exceptionally gorgeously. Eldest brother, second brother, seeing Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu, she cheerfully waved to them. Her way of addressing them was even more intimate, as she skipped out on calling them cousin. Outsiders even thought that she was a young miss of Marquis Gu's manor. Madame Su looked at her 2 nephews. They were tall and handsome, exceptionally so. She could not hide the look of praise in her eyes. Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu stepped forward to greet Madame Su. Auntie, Father sent us and Steward Qi to receive you and younger cousin. Madame Su looked behind them, and Qian stepped forward while slightly bowed, greeting her respectfully. Steward Qi, don't be so courteous. You are someone who has been with our manor for a long time. You were already working for my father when I was still young. How could we have you personally come out to receive us? After saying this, she looked at Gu Shubai, her eyes carrying a plaintive look. Qian hastily explained, Madame Gu, please do not misunderstand. It was this old servant who wished to come. This old servant was very idle in the manor, and Lord Marquis wished to express his warmest welcomes. Thus he sent this old face to receive you. It will also save you from needing to deal with unfamiliar faces. Only now did Madame Su smile. That Lord Marquis of yours, troubling you with coming out here. Could he not have sent Qizhou out? In this world, there was only one person who would dare to rebuke Gu Huaijiang in front of members of Marquis Gu's manor. That person would be Madame Su. Not long later, all of the luggage from the boat was neatly placed inside the carriages. Gu Jiugu looked around. 2 large carriages had been filled, yet that was still not enough. It seems that Madame Su was planning to stay for quite a long time. Madame Gu, young miss, all of the luggage has been packed. Please get in the carriage. Madame Su nodded then, along with Su Yunyan, climbed into a carriage that Marquis Gu's manor had prepared. Gu Shubai and Gu Jiugu rose their horses slightly ahead of the carriage. Along the way, other pedestrians would move out of the way, and this procession was quite grand. Su Yunyan sat in the spacious and resplendent carriage. Lifting the curtain and looking outside, she felt that her face was glowing more and more. Mother, I still like being in the capital more. Would it be fine if we lived here for a bit longer? Madame Su saw that she was looking out at the sights of the streets. Thinking that she liked the liveliness of the capital, she smiled and said, Our Jinling is a former capital city. It won't lose out to the capital city of linen when it comes to liveliness. Why do you like it here so much? It's not because of the liveliness. Su Yunyan pouted and said, After father passed away, when have we ever enjoyed such grandiosity when going out? There was also that low-ranking official in Du too. When they saw people from Marquis Gu's manor, their attitude immediately changed. Even if father was alive, his reputation was not as great as Marquis Gu's manor. The eldest son and second son of Marquis Gu's manor were personally creating a path, and the head steward had personally come to receive them. There was nothing more glorious than this. Su Yunyan had been pampered since she was young and fully enjoyed this sort of glory. Hearing her bring up the matter of her father's passing, Madame Su's eyes dimmed slightly before she helplessly shook her head. Oh I've spoiled you rotten. In Jinling, our Su family is one of the top 2 families. It's also an aristocratic family with a reputation for academics. As for you, it's fine if you weren't willing to study properly, yet you keep reaching for things that are beyond your grasp. You're even looking down on the Su family's nobility. Su Yunyan saw that she looked helpless against her and knew that she was unwilling to punish her. Smiling brightly, she leaned over and rested her head on Madame Su's lap. If it's nobility, aside from the imperial family, who can even compare with Marquis Gu's manor? Mother, how can this be considered reaching for something out of my grasp? Didn't you say that you wanted me to marry into Marquis Gu's manor? When she married into Marquis Gu's manor, she would enjoy that status fully. At that time, it could no longer be considered aiming too high and would just be something that should happen. Madame Su was doting, but also helpless, tapping her on the forehead. Oh how old are you to still be acting spoiled? I have brought this up with your uncle, but he never agreed to it. He even refused when His Majesty tried, saying that he wanted his sons to marry the girls that they liked. If they don't like you, there's no point. Su Yunyan snorted and proudly raised her head. With my beauty, how could my cousins not like me? Moreover, even if uncle refused His Majesty, he might not refuse mother. Who doesn't know that uncle respects you, his eldest sister, the most? She began to massage Madame Su's legs to curry favor with her, and Madame Su faintly smiled, finding her words to be comforting. That's right. We grew up together. When we were young, father forced him to learn martial arts. Even when it was frigid or sweltering, he never stopped. There were times when he would be starved if the training was not going well. I was always the one to secretly bring him food. Oh, our dear Gu family, daughters were always doted on. Even if father knew that I was only feigning compliance, he never punished me. Then isn't that fine? Su Yunyan seemed to have more confidence than Madame Su. Uncle will definitely agree to mother's suggestion. Mother, do you think it would be better for me to marry eldest brother or second brother? She snorted once more. Either way, I won't marry that sickly one. Any of the others is fine. A misunderstanding the carriages that had gone to pick up Madame Su arrived in front of Marquis Gu's manor. However, they found that there was a crowd of palace servants entering the manor while carrying treasures with bright yellow labels attached. The palace servants also had bright yellow labels on them. It was clear that His Majesty had granted Marquis Gu's manor another reward. Madame Su and Su Yunyan had just arrived. Seeing this scene, they hastily retreated to avoid causing trouble. The people from Marquis Gu's manor, however, had long since become accustomed to this sight. It was only after Gu Shubai invited Madame Su inside that she began to walk forward with Su Yunyan. The palace servants brushed past them, and Su Yunyan's eyes landed on the treasures that they were carrying. A light flickered in her eyes. Sure enough, she had been right. In Jinling and in the Su manor, when had they ever seen His Majesty reward them with stuff? As for them, this was their first day in the capital, yet they saw this sort of a scene. The members of Marquis Gu's manor even looked completely accustomed to this. It could be seen just how aristocratic Marquis Gu's manor really was. It was on par with the imperial family. Eldest brother, is this a reward granted to uncle by His Majesty? Su Yunyan pointed at the treasures and asked Gu Shubai with joy and curiosity. One of the eunuchs who happened to be walking past heard this and respectfully stopped, bowing and saying, "Young miss, this was granted to you by His Majesty." Su Yunyan's eyes suddenly grew wide, not daring to believe what she had just heard. To me. Could it be that His Majesty knew that she would be entering the capital today, thus he specifically sent people to give her gifts? Madame Su was a little dumbfounded, but heard the eunuch continue. That's right. His Majesty said it himself. It's to be given to the young miss of Marquis Gu's manor. He had heard Su Yunyan address Gu Shubai as eldest brother. In the capital, was there anyone else who could refer to the eldest son of Marquis Gu's manor as eldest brother? It was clear that it was this young miss. Having received confirmation once more, Su Yunyan became elated and looked at Madame Su in a confused manner. Mother, it was His Majesty who gave it to me. His Majesty hasn't even met you before. It must be to give face to your uncle that he would grant you with gifts. Madame Su naturally knew just how grand Marquis Gu's manor was in the capital. However, she never thought that it would be to such a degree. His Majesty would even grant such a grand gift to a cousin. Gu Huijiang must have brought it up to the emperor before. Young miss of Marquis Gu's manor? Gu Jiugu repeated this and slightly raised an eyebrow, looking toward Gu Shubai. Everyone in the capital knew that Marquis Gu's manor only had one young miss, and that was Yu Fu. This eunuch must have heard Su Yunyan call him eldest brother and mistook her for Yu Fu. That was why he said all of those nice things. Now, things were really quite great. Madame Su and Su Yunyan had both misunderstood. Gu Shubai looked at the mother and daughter and noted their looks of joy. He found it hard to bear, but if the misunderstanding was not cleared up, it might end up causing even more trouble. He gently cleared his throat and gritted his teeth, asking the eunuch, "Did you hear clearly? The one His Majesty is rewarding, is it young Miss Yu Fu or young Miss Su?" Young Miss Su? The eunuch had never heard of any young Miss Su. He thought that Marquis Gu's manor only had Yu Fu as its only young miss. That was why he dared to chime in. Now that he had been given this shock, when he looked up, he found that the young miss before him did not seem to be the right age. Word about the young miss of Marquis Gu's manor had already spread around the capital. She was merely 12 years of age, yet her skills with the zither were exceptional, and her performance had dazzled everyone. How could it be a fully matured girl? This servant deserves to be punished. His Majesty instructed that the gifts be given to young Miss Yu Fu. This servant did not know that there was also a young Miss Su in Marquis Gu's manor. Please forgive this servant's mistake. The eunuch was so scared that he was on the verge of tears, and his head was hanging so low that it was nearly touching the ground. He hated himself for being so eager to speak up for someone else. If he had not been so quick to speak, would this misunderstanding have never happened? Now, things were just great. He had caused an incident. Su Yunyan's expression instantly turned ugly. Furrowing her brow and gritting her teeth, she fiercely clenched her handkerchief. Madame Su was stunned and embarrassingly frowned. She never thought that such a muddled situation would occur. She and Su Yunyan had completely forgotten about the existence of Yu Fu, who knew that an adopted daughter would be so loved by the emperor that he would send people to reward her. Su Yunyan, a proper young miss related to the family, did not get anything, yet all of this had been given to her. Gu Shubai waved his hand. Those who did not know are not guilty. Madame Gu and my cousin both arrived today. It's normal that you would not recognize them. You may leave. Many thanks, eldest young sir. Many thanks, Madame Gu and young Miss? The eunuch retreated while expressing his gratitude. Su Yunyin watched the palace servants pass by the main hall, then wrap around to a courtyard off to the side, and her chest tightened. Auntie, it was the eunuch who did not understand. Please don't argue with him. Father is still waiting in the main hall. This way, please. Gu Jiugu also said, That's right, Auntie, that eunuch was ignorant. Please do not take it to heart. You are the noblest young miss of this manor. Father has already had people tidy up the lotus courtyard where you resided before getting married. It looks brand new. In any case, Madame Su was someone who was born in Marca Gu's manor and had seen many trying experiences. Hearing Gu Jiugu's flattering words, she managed to regain her calm demeanor. Your father has been considerate. Every time that I come back to visit, he would always fix up Lotus Courtyard. When I stay there, it's like returning back to my youth. I feel very at ease. It seemed that the unhappiness from earlier had already passed. It was just that she suddenly stopped outside the main hall and looked over to where the group of palace servants was headed. I remember that the western wing was in that direction, right? The western wing was originally where Gu Huaijiang and his wife had intended for their daughter to live, who knew that she would give birth to the twins, Gu Xiang and Gu Yi, then pass away from complications related to the birth. She had been unable to give birth to a daughter, thus the western wing had always been kept empty. Yes, that is where Yu Fu now resides. Not seeing oneself as an outsider when relatives who had not seen each other reunited, it was natural that there would be a bit of liveliness. Gu Huaijiang welcomed Madame Su with a smile and had her sit at the head of the hall. She swept her gaze across the room and saw that all 6 of her nephews were present. Why do I not see the girl that you've taken in? Gu Huaijiang did not know about the misunderstanding that had occurred outside. He merely thought that Madame Su was just concerned about Yu Fu, and that was why she immediately asked about her upon entering the hall. She will be coming shortly. His Majesty granted her quite a few gifts, and she is there to receive them. You will be able to see her in a moment. With the Emperor's rewards being brought up, Su Yunyin's expression momentarily became unnatural. Of course, they knew about this matter. Su Yunyin had already carefully looked at all of the things given by the Emperor. For example, a jade carving of Chang'e soaring to the moon. The palm-sized moon was clear and brilliant, while the bit of crisp green at the top perfectly reflected the divinity of Chang'e. There were also some sleek furs. The white ones were fox pelts, while the gray ones were probably mink pelts. Once winter arrived, they would be great for turning into coats. What attracted even more attention was a black zither that shone with a faint green light. Aside from the name of Green Beauty, was there another zither that was as unique as this one? His Majesty really was generous. All of these priceless things were all rewarded to a young girl. You as well, you've become muddled. How can a young girl receive emissaries of His Majesty on her own? Also, those things are said to be given to her. But aren't they still to be given to the manor? You should be personally receiving them and having Steward Qi store them in the storehouse. Madame Su subconsciously began to worry about the affairs of the manor, and Gu Huaijiang could only nod along. He only spoke after she finished speaking. Eldest sister, don't worry. Yu Fu has a good sense of propriety and is well educated. She can take responsibility for her own matters. Moreover, those things were indeed given to her by His Majesty. They are rewards for her zither performance during the Mid-Autumn Festival's imperial banquet. I have always let her take care of her own things. Take care of them herself? Madame Su revealed a look of displeasure. In the end, she is not someone of this manner. You're allowing her to take in such priceless things herself. If there comes a day when she takes those things and leaves, how can that possibly be good? Once these words came out, everyone was stunned. Madame Su might have some sort of misunderstanding when it came to Yu Fu. It was not the concern that Gu Huaijiang had initially believed. Lord Marquis, young Miss Yu Fu is coming over. Qi Zhou stood at the door and saw Yu Fu walking over. He reported this to the hall and disrupted the earlier conversation. Madame Su saw everyone else's expressions and immediately regained her composure and put on a dignified expression for meeting a stranger. Su Yunyin also straightened her back and looked outside. They saw a young girl walk in. She had beautiful pale skin and delicate features, and the clothes that she wore were elegant and refined. Upon seeing that there was an unfamiliar madam seated at the head of the room, she smiled and stepped forward to greet her. The dimples on her face were exceptionally sweet. "Greetings to Madame Su." She then stood straight and looked over at the seated Su Yunin, nodding in greeting. "Greetings, Sister Su. As this is our first meeting, I prepared a small gift for Sister Su, and will have Yao Lan send it to Sister's courtyard later." Su Yunyin looked at her in a daze. She never thought that she would be so beautiful. She already looked like this at such a young age. What would happen when she grew up? She could not help but retract the belittling gaze that she previously had and was now looking at her vigilantly. She did not stand, nor did she respond to Yu Fu's greeting, much less thank her for the gift. Yu Fu did not pay this any mind. She just stood there with her head slightly lowered, allowing Madame Su to examine her. A hairpin inlaid with precious gems, a jacket made of brocade, and this was one made with Sichuan embroidery, a sheep-fat jade waist pendant, and embroidered shoes set with shattered jade. From top to bottom, everything that she wore was exceptional. No matter how one looked, she was a dignified young miss of the manor. It was impossible to tell whether or not she was born there. A feeling of unease filled Madame Su's heart. This was not the adopted daughter that she had imagined. An adopted daughter should not be given this much love and dressed even more glamorously than Su Yunyan. This girl is indeed pretty, but it's a pity that her background is unclear. But why did you even have Qi Ting sent out to the countryside for her? In the end, Qi Ting is Steward Qi's granddaughter. Are you unable to tell who is near and dear? Her words were directed at Gu Huaijiang, as she completely disregarded Yu Fu standing in front of her. Yu Fu, Qi Ting. Madame Su had brought these two people out for comparison. Everyone knew that the beloved girl that she was speaking about was actually the maidservant. Based on her words, in her eyes, Yu Fu was a girl who could not even compare with Qi Ting, a maidservant. Gu Shubai's expression changed and thought to himself that this was not good. It was possible that Madame Su had pretended that she did not mind the earlier misunderstanding, but it was actually a thorn in her side. Everyone noticed that something was off. Gui shifted slightly, and Gu Xiang knew that he was thinking of doing something. Thus he instantly moved to press him down. The two elders were speaking. Where was there any room for them to interject? Had he not seen that even eldest brother did not dare to speak? Gu Huaijiang looked at Yu Fu, then said, Yao Hong, as a servant, disrespected her superior and tried to frame Yu Fu for going into my study. Eldest sister should know how serious this matter is. It was on Steward Qi's face that I did not have her chased out and instead sent her to the countryside. Disrespected her superior. Gu Huaijiang was making things very clear to Madame Su that Yu Fu was a master inside this manor. She was not some servant. Yao Hong. Madame Su heard this unfamiliar name and recalled when Yu Fu said that she had prepared a gift for Su Yunyan and mentioned the name Yao Lan. She immediately understood. She really was someone who did not see herself as an outsider. A servant born in Marquis Gu's manor. Was that someone whose name could be changed just like that? She was so young yet already had that sort of a heart. If she was allowed to continue to do as she pleased, would Marquis Gu's manor not end up in trouble? Sickly sprout Madame Su decided that she would make a show of her authority for Yu Fu. She would have her know that this manor was not a place for her to mess around in. There was still someone who could keep her in check. You're called Yu Fu. Is Yu your surname? Yu Fu seemed to notice Madame Su's dislike her for. When she entered, she had a faint smile displaying her dimples, but she was now standing there while feeling restrained. Her expression was a little uneasy. I am. She hesitated for a moment before quietly replying. The surname Yu is quite rare. I don't believe I have ever heard of anyone in Eastern Ling having such a surname. What country are you from? Where are your parents and family? These were questions that Yu Fu had never wanted to answer, and they had never pressed the issue. Madame Su was the first to ask her so pressingly. Her hand unconsciously grabbed the jade pendant at her waist and cautiously said, I am from Immortal's Valley. When Gu Huaijiang was fighting at the border, he had been struck by a poisoned arrow shot by someone from Western Kuan. It was Yu Fu who had been brought from Immortal's Valley to save him. Madame Su knew about this. If not, she would not have allowed Gu Huaijiang to take Yu Fu in. I know that you are from Immortal's Valley, and I know that you saved Lord Marquis' life. There's no need to provide me with such a roundabout answer. Immortal's Valley is not a country, and the people inside come from all three countries. Are you someone from Northern Li or Western Kuan? By the time she finished speaking, her voice was raised, and her tone was as if she was interrogating her. Gu Shubai stood up from his seat and walked over to shield her. Only then did she shyly raise her head to look up at her. She did not know why. Why was Madame Su treating her like this? This left her not knowing how to act. Auntie, don't press Yu Fu. She would only be raised in Immortal's Valley from childhood if she had some difficulties in her life. Otherwise, what sort of child would not want to grow up next to their parents? You asking these questions, is it not just going to hurt Yu Fu's feelings? Yu Fu's identity was a secret. This was a secret that Gu Shubai had previously encountered, and he had promised Yu Fu that he would help keep this secret. Now, it was time for him to keep his promise. That's right, Auntie. Yu Fu saved Father's life. She has been in the manor for such a long time, but never caused any trouble. Please do not hesitate to feel at ease. Gu Wenqing also chimed in to speak for Yu Fu. Madame Su looked at the group. All of the brothers were actually speaking up for Yu Fu. They were actually willing to go against her for Yu Fu's sake. This was backwards. It really was backwards. You guys don't even have a clear understanding of her background, yet you all treat her like a young miss of the manor? Though Marquis Gu's manor is prestigious, there are quite a few sets of eyes watching it. Are you not worried that a person with an unclear background might cause trouble? Madame Su found this hard to believe. She had only been in the manor for half a year. So how did she manage to capture the hearts of everyone? Auntie, we have never thought of Yu Fu as a young miss of the manor. Gu Shubai faintly smiled, his eyes bright. Regardless of her surname or her background, she is a young miss of the manor. There's no need for anyone to think of her as one or not. This was a roundabout rebuttal that flipped Madame Su's words back on her. Gu Huaijiang saw that the atmosphere was not great and waved at everyone. You guys can leave for now. Your auntie and I have not met for a long time and have much to discuss. Everyone felt relieved and retreated from the main hall. It was only after getting away from the hall's vicinity that Yu Fu's stiff body finally began to relax, as she let out a quiet sigh. Upon looking up, she found 6 pairs of eyes staring at her, and she could not help but blush. How could she have forgotten that all 6 of the people around her were trained in martial arts? Not to mention a sigh, but they might even be able to hear the movements of her internal organs. Did I say something wrong earlier that might have made Madame Su unhappy? You didn't. All 6 of them replied in the exact same way. Even the usually silent Gu Hanemo solemnly shot this idea down. Yu Fu felt much better. It's possible that the misunderstanding from earlier caused a knot to form in Auntie's heart. Gu Shubai sighed and recounted the misunderstanding from earlier, and Gu Jiugu added, at that time, Aunty's expression was already quite ugly. You all know that she values face the most. This misunderstanding caused her to feel that she had lost face in front of the palace servants. It's natural that she would be unhappy. So there was such a thing. Gu Xiang furrowed his brow and said, Then this is horrible. That girl, Su Yunyan, loves vanity above all else. Seeing Yu Fu receive gifts from His Majesty that she did not get will definitely make her feel jealous. If she says anything to Auntie, with how much Auntie spoils her, she will definitely treat Yu Fu poorly. That's right. When that girl came last time, didn't she steal all of our nice things? As males, it's natural that we could not argue with her, but if she dares to bully Yu Fu, I won't let her off. Gui made a gesture with his fist. Thinking about Su Yunyan's unreasonable appearance, he became extremely angry. Gu Xiang knew that he hated Su Yunyan the most because he was frail when he was younger. Su Yunyan would always mock his sickly appearance. There was one time when he got angry and pushed Su Yunyan. She cried and ran off to tattle to Gu Huaijiang. The result was obvious. In line with Marquis Gu's manners rule of raise boys strictly and dote on daughters, nothing happened to Su Yunyan. On the other hand, Gu Yi was given quite an admonishment. Su Yunyan could not sit still in the hall. Not long later, she ran out to look for Gu Shubai and the others and happened to see the 6 brothers chatting on a small path in the bamboo forest. It looked like they were being very secretive. A desire for mischief came to her, and she stealthily walked up before loudly shouting, "Hey, what sort of bad stuff is the sickly sprout saying?" Probe Gui was given a fright. Turning around, he found that it was Su Yunyan and was given another fright. "You tomboy, what nonsense are you spouting? Who's saying bad stuff?" Su Yunyan looked carefully and found that Yu Fu was behind the 6 others. She was too short, thus her entire figure was blocked. She already had some complicated feelings towards Yu Fu. Now that she had been called a tomboy by Gui in front of her, how could she possibly accept this insult? She hastily ran forward, but Gui had prepared himself beforehand. He dodged back, while Su Yunyan rushed forward to try and grab him by the ear. "I am Gu Xiang. The one who called you a tomboy was Gui." Gu Xiang grabbed her hand to protect his ear. Su Yunyan froze. She could not tell the difference between Gu Xiang and Gui. Gui was hiding in the back and suddenly poked his head up, delightedly making a face at her. "Not only are you a tomboy, but your eyes are also really bad. Ha ha ha. You damn sickly sprout. Just wait and see if I won't give you a beating." The two chased each other and fought for a while. They only stopped when they were gasping for air, while Yu Fu stared in a complete daze. It seemed as though the two got along very well, completely unlike what Gui had said. Su Yunyan was breathing hard. Seeing Yu Fu look at her, she hastily stood up straight, puffed out her chest, and slightly raised her chin. "Why are you also here? We were just about to send Yu Fu back. Gui, you take Yunyan back to her courtyard." Gu Jiuge was the least kind, pushing Gui out, which prompted another round of beatings from Su Yunyan. "Second brother, why don't you send her yourself? Whoever wants to do it can do it." "I won't go." Su Yunyan angrily glared at him. Now that this damn sickly sprout was no longer sickly, he dared to bully her? He wanted to send Yu Fu back, but did not want to send her back. Was this not making it clear that he liked Yu Fu more? "No, I won't return to my courtyard. I want to go with you guys to see where Yu Fu is living." "Yu Fu, you won't refuse to welcome me, right?" She provocatively looked at Yu Fu, and the latter deliberately avoided her gaze, slightly lowering her head. "I won't. Sister Su, please come along." "Mother, you have no idea how gorgeous Yu Fu's western wing is. Compared to when we came here in the past when it was completely empty, it's truly too beautiful. Her room is so elegant. There are all kinds of treasures that I've never seen before." After returning to Lotus Courtyard, Su Yunyan gestured with her arms and legs to vividly describe the things that she had seen in the western wing. "In the end," she added, "compared to this Lotus Courtyard that Mother grew up in, it's far more magnificent." Madame Su had already changed into her bedchamber clothes. Seated on her bed, she was soaking her feet and listening to the sound of rippling water from the lake. It was particularly pleasant. Lotus Courtyard was located next to a lake. The beautiful scenery of the lake could be seen just by opening a window. There was a large area of lotuses outside, and that was why this was called Lotus Courtyard. She was in the middle of thinking back to the scenery from her childhood. Hearing what Su Yunyan said, her expression instantly sank, and she opened her eyes. "When I was a young miss of the manor, how could your grandfather have had as much glory as your uncle does now? In the past, the manor was not as large as it is now. Then why does uncle not give Mother a different courtyard? Lotus Courtyard is both old and small. Although the repairs are quite nice, can it compare to the western wing?" Madame Su had never liked it when she compared things in this way. She was also like this in Jinling, but she was no longer comparing with the young misses of other influential families. It was just a girl with an unclear background, thus Madame Su could not bring herself to scold her. Could it be that she would have to tell Su Yunyan that she was not as important as an adopted daughter in Marquis Gu's manor? To a girl who had lost her father, that would be too tragic. Your uncle has 6 sons and has always wanted a daughter. It's natural that he would treat her a little better. She is also someone who saved your uncle's life. It's natural that she should be treated courteously. Madame Su said this, but seemed to be unable to even convince herself, as the corner of her mouth was twitching. She still thought of Su Yunyan as a child, having been hoodwinked by what she had said. But she is not his daughter. A fake cannot become real. I am uncle's actual niece. If he wants a daughter, I will stay here for a long time. As for that little girl, Yu Fu, she'll be like a maidservant in the manor. At most, she will just be a guest relying on the family's support. She is unworthy of enjoying all of that. How could Madame Su not also think this way? That was why they never had any intention of taking Yu Fu seriously, nor did they ever think of Yu Fu as family. But the emperor had personally granted her gifts. In Marquis Gu's manor, everyone from Gu Huaijiang down doted on and loved her. It was clear that they all thought of her as a proper young miss. Look at the situation today. I only asked a few questions about Yu Fu's background before Shu Bai moved to stop me. He has always been a steady and reasonable child. It's quite evident with his actions just how much he protects Yu Fu. Madame Su let out a sigh, her forehead becoming gloomy. If she was just a girl from a family with a lowly standing, it would be fine. I am just worried that she is a spy from another country, and that she has come to the manor with some sort of secret that cannot be revealed. Marquis Gu's manor had an overly unique situation. In the past, the manor was like a cage. Things were strict and carried out in an orderly fashion. Now that Yu Fu was here, the atmosphere in the manor had changed. It made her feel uneasy because it was so unfamiliar. Spy? Su Yun clicked her tongue, and an idea came to mind, Mother. Don't worry. I will go and probe around a bit to see if she is a spy or not. Hard to explain. Early in the morning, Su Yunyan hastily finished putting on her makeup, then ran over to the western wing. Passing through the inner gate of the courtyard, she walked gingerly around towards the backyard, then hid in a hall near Yu Fu's room. After a long time, she finally heard some movement coming from inside. Lazybones. She's only getting up at this hour. Su Yunyan muttered to herself, then plastered her ear against the window, trying to hear the sounds coming from inside more clearly. Young miss, how about wearing this jacket embroidered with rose patterns for today? Madame Gu and young Miss Su have just arrived. You should dress a little more vibrantly. They had suddenly brought her up. Su Yunyan did her best to press herself against the window to try and hear Yu Fu's response. After a brief silence, Yu Fu let out a quiet grunt. Her voice revealed a bit of sleepiness from having just woken up. The two younger maidservants misunderstood and thought that she was unhappy. Is young Miss unhappy? When that young Miss came over here yesterday, she did not act like a guest at all. It was as if she was the master here. Even we servants felt bad for young Miss. This voice was clear like a silver bell. Su Yunyan gritted her teeth outside the window and thought to herself that she would remember this maidservant. The western wing had a maidservant called Yin Ling, and her voice sounded exactly like this. She definitely did not make a mistake. Yin Ling, don't spout nonsense. Lian Bai understood Yu Fu's personality and knew that she was not such a petty person. Yin Ling was commenting on Su Yunyan, and if some outsider heard this, they might think that Yu Fu hated Su Yunyan. That would become a problem. Yu Fu slowly began to wake up from her daze. Seeing Yin Ling hang her head, she tried to comfort her. All right, I know that you were doing it for my sake. Don't feel sad. But everyone here is family. Harmony is most important. In the future, nobody is to comment on Madame Gu and young Miss Su. Do you understand? Yes, this servant understands. Su Yunyan did not hear her join in on bad-mouthing her with the maidservant and felt a little disappointed, muttering to herself, who would be family with you? Little Yu Fu, have you gotten up? Gu Yi's loud voice suddenly came from the front, giving Su Yunyan a fright, as she hastily dropped into a sitting position in the hall. It was fortunate that the ground was clean. It seemed that it had been tidied up with great care, and it did not dirty the dress that she wore. While moving to dust off her dress, she quietly cussed out Gu Yi, sickly sprout. Your loud shouting really startled me. Coming to look for Yu Fu so early in the morning. Why don't I see you going to Lotus Courtyard to look for me? The maidservant inside said, 5th young sir, 6th young sir. Our young miss still hasn't brushed her hair. Would the two of you please enjoy some tea while waiting in the outer room? It turned out that it was not just Gu Yi. Gu Xiang was also present. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi had become accustomed to this a long time ago. Every time they came to look for Yu Fu, they would need to go and wait in the outer room while sipping on tea. Yu Fu got up even later than they did. Auntie Li had said that young children should sleep more. Only with more sleep could they grow taller. The two of them believed these words and did not like the idea of Yu Fu always being this short. As a result, they would always obediently drink tea while waiting in the outer room. Things were the same today. Just as Gu Xiang was about to walk out, he suddenly heard some suspicious sounds coming from the back hallway. He furrowed his brow and recalled Gu Huaijiang's repeated warnings to remain careful. Someone was secretly keeping an eye on Marquis Gu's manor and waiting for something to happen. With a sudden rush of adrenaline, he thought that the sound had come from a criminal. He turned around and entered the inner room. Yu Fu was currently facing the mirror while putting on her makeup. Seeing this sudden appearance, she was stunned. Gu Xiang had already leaped up and was soaring towards the back window. "Impudent criminal! Where are you trying to flee to?" The entire window frame was shattered, as both Gu Xiang and Gui flew out through the window. With a plunk, it sounded as if someone had fallen into the water. If the criminal was hiding on the other side of the window, it was extremely likely that they had been kicked into the water by Gu Xiang. "You guys stay in the room and protect the young miss. Don't come out." Auntie Li heard the ruckus and waved to the male servants outside to charge into the hall. They found Gu Xiang and Gu Yi standing there in a daze. "Fifth young sir, sixth young sir, where's the criminal?" "Criminal?" Gu Xiang had an expression of having done something terribly wrong. Extending his arm, he pointed down. There, they saw a girl in beautiful clothes struggling in the water. Her hair was a mess, and she looked to be in a truly terrible state. Was that not Su Yunyan? "Young miss, are you all right? Quickly go and save the young miss." Auntie Li hastily gestured for the male servants to go down. While Su Yunyan struggled, she also screamed, "Gu Yi, you bastard. I won't forgive you." Gui was stunned and looked at Gu Xiang. The one who had kicked her into the water was clearly Gu Xiang. Why was she cursing at him? Oh right, this tomboy could not tell the difference between him and Gu Xiang. Just as Gui was about to speak up and argue back, he saw Gu Xiang copy his usual voice and shout at Su Yunyan. "The one who got kicked was you, the tomboy. Who told you to sneak around in Yu Fu's courtyard? Come and hit me, you tomboy." After saying this, he immediately ran off as fast as he could. This left Gui standing there in a total daze. "You!" Su Yunyan watched Gui run away and angrily slammed a fist into the water, causing a giant splash. Gui saw that things were not good and hastily explained, "Oi, tomboy, I'm here." "That was Gu Xiang. It was Gu Xiang who kicked you." Su Yunyan glanced at him sideways and said in an annoyed and miserable voice, "Gu Xiang, don't even think of taking the blame for that sickly sprout. I know that he was definitely the one who kicked me. I'm going to tell Uncle." Whoa, geez, now the situation was going to be hard to explain. That's how things went. Who told her to go and act so secretively in Yu Fu's courtyard so early in the morning? Son did it to protect Yu Fu in hopes that father can forgive me. Gu Xiang was kneeling on the ground with a look of honor on his face. Fooling around was just fooling around. When in front of Gu Huaijiang, he still took responsibility for his actions. It was only then that Su Yunyan knew that it really was Gu Xiang who had kicked her. Madame Su sat at the head of the room and thought back to when she had helped Su Yunyan get changed. There was a patch of purple and blue on her body, and this caused her heart to ache. If someone else had her endure such an injury, even if she had to fight to the death, she would get revenge for Su Yunyan. But the person who had given her the injury was Gu Xiang. It was her own nephew, and he had not done it with wicked intentions. He had simply mistaken Su Yunyan for an assassin. This left her unable to vent the anger in her heart. In the end, she looked at Yu Fu. This was all her fault. If it was not to protect her, how could Gu Xiang start attacking without even verifying the situation? How could Su Yunyan have ended up in this state? "You may stand." Gu Huaijiang let out a sigh. It was he who had said that anything done to protect Yu Fu could be forgiven. He could not break this promise. Moreover, this matter really could not be blamed on Gu Xiang. "Yunyan, how is your injury? What did the imperial physician say?" Su Yunyan saw that things had escalated. Word of her going to eavesdrop on Yu Fu getting out would not sound good. Thus she wanted to patch things up to avoid trouble. Just as she was about to say that she was fine, who knew that Madame Sue would be the first to speak, her tone full of resentment. Falling into the water from such a high place, there are large bruises on her body. I fear that it won't get any better for another 10 days to half a month. Gu Huaijiang paused for a moment, then said, Fortunately, the manor has the best ointments for that. Have a maidservant apply it every night before going to bed, and it will quickly get better. But Yunyan, why were you outside Yufu's window? Without a change in tone, he turned the conversation in that direction. Su Yunyan knew that what she had done was wrong, and Madame Su did not dare be too biased. I was thinking of going to look for Sister Yufu to play, but the western wing is too big, and I ended up getting lost. I heard them speaking from outside the window and could not find the time to go in. Her lying skill was not great. Anyone with a bit of experience would not be deceived by the child's words. This was the case for Gu Huaijiang and for Madame Su. Seeing a slight change in Madame Su's expression, Gu Huaijiang continued, It's just a misunderstanding. They've grown up fighting and messing around. It's nothing too serious. If eldest sister is angry, let's just have Gu Xiang apologize to Yan. Sure enough, the atmosphere became formal after the apology, but they no longer felt like family. Madame Su shook her head and looked at Yufu once more, saying with displeasure, In the end, it's you guys who have spoiled Yufu rotten. Marquis Gu's manor is extremely secure. Where could an assassin have come from? If not for treating her so preciously, how could Gu Xiang have taken action without even checking to see what sort of person was there? It was Gu Xiang's actions that hurt Su Yunyan. How could this be related to Yufu? This was clearly just Madame Su looking for a punching bag and using Yufu to vent. Gu Huaijiang thought back to the previous day. After the children had left, he had a long chat with Madame Su about many things. She had reminded him that there might be some problems with Yufu's identity and advised him not to treat an adopted daughter overly well. She also reminded him that men and women should not mingle, thus Yufu should not be so close with Gu Shubai and the others. The essence of it was that she did not like Yufu. Gu Huaijiang had also made his stance completely clear. However, this eldest sister had always been accustomed to just making arbitrary decisions. She was not at all willing to listen to him. Even to this moment, she was opposing Yufu. Auntie, this matter was my fault. It's fine if you get angry, beat me, or curse at me, but it's completely unrelated to Yufu. Gu Xiang hastily stood up and subconsciously moved to protect Yufu. Yufu also protected him. Fifth brother was afraid that I would be in danger. Last time, something almost happened when I fell into the water. That's why fifth brother was so nervous. If it was Madame Su or Sister Su, fifth brother would also do the same. He just wants to protect his family. The words were very proper, and they deflected blame from Gu Xiang's mistake. They also provided an out for Madame Su and Su Yunyan. Su Yunyan thought about it for a moment and felt that what she had said seemed to be reasonable. She, Gu Xiang, and Gui often fought and messed around, but it was not too likely that Gu Xiang truly wanted to hurt her. Madame Su's expression, however, did not change much. She could tolerate Gu Xiang refuting what she had said. However, she could not tolerate Yufu doing the same. Gu Xiang was a young sir of Marquis Gu's manor and her nephew. Who was Yufu to dare to speak back to her? The rules of this manor really do keep increasing. When the adults are speaking, anyone is able to interject. Madame Su sneered and gave an unkind look to Yufu. Suddenly, they heard Qizhou come in and report. Lord Marquis, the eldest prince has arrived, saying that he is looking for young Miss Yufu. The members of Marquis Gus Manor did not have particularly great feelings for the eldest prince and the second prince. However, they were very grateful for the arrival of the eldest prince. This was the rumored timely reign, and nothing could be better than this. Auntie, the eldest prince's status is noble, and it would not be good to delay. Gu Xiang and Gu Yi will stay here to receive your punishment. We will go and send Yufu to go and see the eldest prince. Gu Shubai and the others said this and all stood up, while Gu Huaijiang just waved to them. No matter how unhappy Madame Su was, she did not dare to offend the eldest prince. Aside from the second prince, he was the one most likely to be chosen as the crown prince. Only Gu Xiang and Gu Yi were left behind to watch their 4 older brothers leave with Yufu. For a while, they remained stunned and silent. Why was it that they had never noticed how mean their older brothers were? The eldest prince, as before, was waiting at the martial arts training ground. When everyone arrived, he was in the middle of taking a sip of tea. Seeing Yufu arrive, he quickly stood up and walked toward her. Little Yufu, what happened? Have you been made to suffer? In his memory, Yufu always had a smile, the dimples being especially cute. Today, however, she looked a little down. Her lively eyes were also not as bright as they usually were. Yufu subconsciously felt her face and wondered to herself, were her expressions really that obvious? Raising her head to look at everyone's faces made it clear that it really was extremely obvious. Gu Shubai glanced at the eldest prince's teacup and slightly raised an eyebrow. Eldest prince has been here for a while, right? The teacup was nearly empty. The eldest prince smiled. That's right. I came long ago. Hearing that something happened with the young miss related to the family, I told the servants that there was no rush to report my arrival. In any event, I just trained on my own for a bit. How about it, sending someone to report it this time? It didn't cause any disruptions, did I? Rather than a disruption, the eldest prince's arrival really came at the best possible time. Gu Wenqing spoke up. Only now did he realize that this was not as coincidental as he initially believed. The eldest prince had done this on purpose. It was no wonder that he would appear like a timely rain just as Madame Su was opposing Yufu. Many thanks, Brother Zhao. Yufu picked up on the profound nature of the situation and bowed to him. It was nothing. There's no need to be courteous. The eldest prince gave her a kind smile, then began to discuss martial arts with Gu Shubai and the others. Yufu obediently went and sat inside to drink tea and eat pastries. Not long later, Gu Xiang and Gu Yi also came over with Su Yunyan following behind them. Why did Yunyan also come? Gu Jiegu was surprised, and Su Yunyan immediately retorted, What? Does second brother not wish for me to have come? Naturally, that's not the case. It's just that your injury has not gotten better, and this is a training ground. It's not safe. You should go inside and eat pastries with Yufu. Gu Jiegu would never say anything offensive to girls. When Su Yunyan heard him show concern for her injury, she immediately began to smile. Everyone took her to meet the eldest prince before she went inside and sat across from Yufu. The maidservants brought out more tea and pastries. Yufu liked eating crab cakes and candied fruits. The maidservants brought out more pastries in line with what Yufu liked for Su Yunyan. Now, Su Yunyan was unhappy. I like eating apple roses. I don't like crab cakes. As for these candies, they're for children. I really don't like them. The maidservant who had brought her the snacks was given a fright and did not dare speak. She just bowed and stood in front of her. Yufu had been silently eating her snacks. Upon seeing this, she said to the maidservant, Go and bring some of the foods that the young miss likes. Go quickly. Hold it. The maidservant had been feeling grateful and was just about to leave when Su Yunyan came up with an idea, calling for her to stop. There's no need to bring anything. I can manage with eating this. You may leave. I have something to speak about with Yufu. There's no need to come back. Saying this, she looked over at Yao Lan, who was standing behind Yufu, and gave her a look. The maidservant who had brought the pastries retreated. However, Yao Lan did not pay attention to Su Yunyan's look. Instead, she looked at Yufu. Oh, she could not even order around a mere maidservant? Just as Su Yunyan was about to speak out, Yufu nodded to Yao Lan. Only then did the latter hesitantly depart. Suddenly, they were the only two left inside the room. One quietly and harmlessly ate crab cakes, taking tiny bites while occasionally taking sips of tea. The other did not eat any of the pastries and did not drink any tea. Her eyes were focused on Yufu. It was as if she was a pastry laying on the side of the road. Yufu, you must really detest me, huh? Her words carried ill intent, and Yufu froze for a moment, then put the crab cake that she had nibbled back on her plate. That's not it. Sister Su has a very magnanimous personality. I like you very much. Yufu had a very earnest expression. This time, it was Su Yunyan who was stunned. She had prepared a whole number of things to say, wanting to strike back at Yufu, who knew that she would respond like this. She liked her? She was magnanimous? Her carefree words seemed to be earnest. No, no, she had come to be belligerent. She could not allow Yu Fu's flowery words to overcome her bluster. Humph, humph. I see you aren't telling the truth. But regardless of whether or not you like me, I don't like you. You're just a girl with an unclear background. I am the one related to Marquis Gu's manor by blood. I am Uncle's actual niece, so why is it that you receive better treatment than I do? Huh, that. Then go and tell the head general to dote on you. His niece more. Huh. Su Yunyin looked at her in surprise. There were no defects with this girl's head, right? Why was it that she could not even get an argument started with her? What's the point of telling Uncle? Uncle treats you as if you were his daughter. Everything nice goes to you. If I tell him, would he even listen? This was quite reasonable. Yu Fu nodded, moving her small head. The small silver bells hanging from her head also began to swing. How about this? Whenever the head general gives me something in the future, I will give it to you. How about that? Or how about, whenever you want something, I can buy it for you? If it was just something that could be resolved with material goods, it would truly be too simple. She was fine with not wanting any material items. Would Madame Su and Su Yunyin like her just like that? Oomph. You'll buy it? Isn't your money all from my uncle? What money of your own do you have? Su Yunyin was beside herself with anger. She felt as though it was impossible to get on the same page as her. No, that was not right. It was the argument that was failing to come together. Yu Fu earnestly said, I do have money. I have a lot of silver and gold. Yao Lan is helping me take care of it. It wasn't given to me by the head general. It's mine. Hogwash, where would a girl from a remote area get a lot of silver and gold? She really has it. At some point, Gui had burst into the room. He must have been eavesdropping outside the door for quite some time, as he was still holding a piece of clothing. Yu Fu looked at the piece of clothing. For some reason, it looked a little familiar. It was a small pink jacket that looked as if it belonged to the daughter of a wealthy family. What was Gui doing with it? Tomboy, take a close look. These are the clothes that Yu Fu wore before coming to our manor. Take a good look at the fabric, the workmanship, and the embroidery. Are any of them not exceptional? These were Yu Fu's old clothes? Su Yunyin furrowed her brow and stepped forward, half doubting and half believing what had just been said before feeling the fabric. The fabric was mixed with silver threads that shone under the sunlight. However, it was not at all heavy. Instead, it was just right and was very soft. This was a great fabric that did not lose out to Jean Ling's cloud-patterned brocade. Su Yunyin instantly lost all of her bluster and began to mumble. How could this be possible? Sixth brother. When did you secretly hide my clothes? Yu Fu was both embarrassed and annoyed. She was young and was growing quickly. Every few months, she would need a new set of clothes. She had worn this set of clothes while in Immortal's Valley. After arriving at Marquis Gu's manor, new clothes were made, and these clothes ended up feeling a little too small. Normally speaking, the old clothes that she no longer wore would be specifically tidied up by her room's maidservants. How could they end up in Gui's hands? Hee, you have so many sets of old clothes. What does it matter if I take one? It's fortunate that I kept a set of your old clothes. Otherwise, there would be someone who would think that you're a poor child who came to seek benefits from living with a powerful family. Take a look at these clothes. Is there any part of it that is worse than what she is wearing now? As Gui said this, he brought the clothes over to Su Yunyin to compare once more. He did not have a very complete understanding of clothing material, but he could see that Yu Fu's old clothes were of a higher quality than what Su Yunyin was currently wearing. Su Yunyin angrily slapped his hand away. Thoroughly embarrassed and finding things hard to endure, she ran out. Sixth brother, why did you make Sister Su run away in anger? Yu Fu walked out, wanting to persuade Su Yunyin to stay, but how could she possibly find her? Who knew where she had run off to? Gui scratched his head. He felt as though he had not done anything wrong. He did not want Yu Fu to be treated unfairly, but at seeing Su Yunyin's figure when running off, he felt that she was a little pitiful. Wait, he had not made a mistake, right? He actually thought that foul-mouthed tomboy was pitiful? This was definitely a mistaken feeling. It was wrong. What's wrong? With Su Yunyin running off, everyone who was training at the archery range came over and saw Gui holding some clothes. Why did you bring this out? Gu Xiang gave him a look, trying to tell him to quickly put the clothes away. However, it was already too late. Gu Shubai walked up and took the clothes from his hand. Looking at the clothes carefully, he then looked at Gu Yi as if he was some sort of pervert. These are a young girl's clothes? Yu Fu's? He had never seen Yu Fu wear these clothes. When Yu Fu first came to the manor, he was in Jinling, celebrating Madame Su's birthday. But aside from Yu Fu's clothes, the manor did not have another young girl's clothes that Gui would find worthy of being hidden away. Gui accepted his fate and nodded, revealing what had just happened. I saw that Yao Lan was outside the door, so I came over to listen in. I was worried that the tomboy would bully Yu Fu, who knew that I really would hear her spout some nonsense, so I quickly had someone go back and bring these clothes over to let her take a good look to know that Yu Fu is not just some girl from the wilderness. What sort of girl from the wilderness could wear clothes that were worth more than the clothes of a young miss from an official's manor? The eldest prince's eyes landed on the jacket, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. Who knew what he had thought of? Gu Jiogu calmly moved to stand in front of him and took the jacket from his hands and gave it to Yao Lan. Quickly go and put this away. Next time, keep a good eye on them, and don't let this little brat, Gu Yi, sneak away with them. Gu Shubai looked in his direction and saw the eldest prince behind him. He then thought to himself that this was not good. What if the eldest prince began to have suspicions about Yu Fu's identity? It was possible that this would cause trouble for Marquis Gu's manor. Gui, you've gone too far in this matter. Yu Fu's a girl. Are the clothes that she wore things that you can hide away just because you want to? If I find out about this happening again, don't even think about setting foot in her western wing again. Gu Shubai seldomly became stern. His brow slightly furrowed into a fierce angle. The younger brothers did not dare make a sound. Eldest prince, this was just young children messing around. There's no need to take it to heart. Let's continue training. Please dash. The eldest prince faintly smiled but did not say anything, leaving the room first. Gu Shubai followed him out. When he stepped out of the room, he turned his head and gave Yu Fu a look. She had always been clever. How could she possibly not understand Gu Shubai's intent? She was immediately shocked and began to worry that the eldest prince might suspect something. It should not be the case, right? He treated her very well and would not do anything to harm her. Little Yu Fu, you aren't mad, right? Everyone had left the room, and Gui was miserably looking at Yu Fu. He felt that he had caused a huge problem. No, sixth brother, I am not mad. It's just some clothes. If you like them, you can just ask me for them. Don't sneak around and hide them. Really? Gu Yi was instantly brimming with vigor once more, snorting at Gu Xiang. Then what was eldest brother being so fierce for? No matter how big of a mistake we've made in the past, he's never been so fierce, but he nearly scared me to death just now. Huh. Gu Xiang let out a sigh and smacked him on the back of his head. Idiot. You think that eldest brother was really angry at you just for the clothing? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.